Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Adriana struggled to keep her eyes open. Her head ached, and her throat felt dry. She turned around and realized that she was lying not in her usual bed in the dormitory, but somewhere in an unfamiliar place, and the naked girl sat up abruptly, which made her dizzy even more. God! Adriana pressed her hands to her temple and looked at the luxurious bedroom. More like an expensive hotel room, huge king-sized bed, white linens, blankets in disarray, and she herself completely naked. The girl saw her dress and panties on the carpet near the chair. She looked for her cell phone and found it nearby on the nightstand. Adriana turned it on to check the time and saw a message about replenishing her bank card. On her account fell $1,000, and then everything fell into place for her and the place of waking up and her condition and money. The girl covered her face with her hands and cried. Her mind began to flash back to the night before. She had been so drunk at the banquet that it had not been difficult for her companion to take her to a hotel and take advantage of her inebriated state. And the money was for extra favors. What had I done? Adriana was bitter and resentful. At 21, she'd never dated anyone before. She'd been waiting for the one person she'd be ready to marry and spend her life with. And now it appeared that her innocence, which she had cherished for so long, had not only been lost with the first man she met, but also sold. The student dining hall was as noisy as ever. "What's that?" asked Betty, her friend, when she saw the mashed potatoes and compote on the tray. "The cheapest thing on the menu. I'm broke again. I'm a week away from my scholarship," Adriana admitted. "It's inconvenient to ask my parents. They already pay for my dormitory, stationery. They also send me clothes." "I can see that," Betty snorted, looking at the gaudy outfit, the girl, jeans, t-shirt, cartoon prints of gray thick. Under her appraising gaze, Adriana felt embarrassed, but she really couldn't compare to the bright, beautiful Betty, who wore only the most fashionable branded clothes. To be honest, the girl always wondered where her friend got so much money from. Her parents were not that well off. When asked about the source of her wealth, Betty usually answered evasively and smiled enigmatically. "I was thinking of getting a part-time job, but I don't know if I can combine it with my studies. The shifts are so inconvenient everywhere." "Where are you going to get a part-time job?" Betty asked. "Picked a vitamin salad. There's a vacancy for a salesman in a bakery across the subway, but it requires a health book. They're also looking for an evening receptionist at a private dental clinic, but you have to work every day. It's not very convenient." Betty looked at Adriana once more, sighed, and stood up as if deciding something for herself. "Forget about those part-time jobs. I have a better offer." The girl sat in front of the laptop in the kitchen, in a bikini apartment. What did Adriana shriek in surprise? "She doesn't scream. That's how you stall for help," Betty decided. "Are you suggesting I work as a call girl?" "What's a call girl?" "It's an escort. There's a huge difference. You don't have to do any of that with a client, unless you want to. For an extra fee, do you?" Adriana opened her eyes, looked at her friend. Betty rolled her eyes. "What kind of prude are you? I'm not a prostitute. I just help rich people. It's nice to spend an evening in the company of a beautiful girl. They'll take you to a fancy event or a restaurant. They feed you, entertain you, and pay you money. It's a dream job. I don't believe it. Free cheese, as they say. Girlfriend, I've been doing this for 2 years. I've never had a problem. It's a trusted site. They only let decent, wealthy men in. You have no idea how much the access fee is, especially not for me. Where are they gonna get the money for that fee? I can't even buy a cutlet in the student cafeteria. You're an idiot. Only men pay. It's free for girls to post profiles. I don't know. So do you have a decent picture of you in a dress and makeup?" Betty ignored her friend's hesitant remarks and motioned to her laptop, which had a screen on it, a site for elite escort services, probably from the reunion. Yep, found it. Let's fill out the form now. 15 minutes later, Betty turned the laptop to her friend and threw herself on the back of a chair in satisfaction. Adriana read the questionnaire her friend had filled out for her. But I don't know Spanish perfectly. I can barely even speak English. Nonsense. Betty waved her hand. How many people in Russia even know Spanish? At most you'll say some similar gibberish. The main thing now is to make a confident expression on your face. Adriana looked at her friend with all her eyes. Today Betty had opened up to her from a completely unexpected side. I can't do that. I mumbled to the girl. You won't know until you try it, Betty declared. I'm not sure anyone's going to choose me. They're all so pretty. Adriana nodded at the pictures of the other girls in the dorm, all in sexy dresses. Everyone has their own tastes. You have a very pretty face. You've got a nice figure. Some just like such inexperienced modestly, went around constantly one silicone boobs and pumped up lips. Sooner or later you'll want something fresh. For a couple of days, Adriana worried, constantly remembering this questionnaire. What if someone she knew saw it? What would they think of her? But soon the credit week began, and the girl had other worries. So Betty's call came as a surprise to Adriana. Girlfriend, you've got a hit on your profile. The girl lowered her voice and straight to the receiver. A very rich man suggests you attend a charity auction on Friday night. What Friday? Adriana was dumbfounded. This Friday, which is tomorrow. But I have a philosophy exam on Saturday morning. Yes, I'm booked up for that exam. They offer so much money, you lie that you're sick and arrange a retake. I have to teach you everything. But I don't even have the right clothes, and I don't even know what they do at these auctions. I don't want to embarrass myself. Adriana, relax. I'll pick out your clothes. Don't even worry about the rest. No one expects you to have a highly intellectual conversation. You just have to stand next to your man and smile. Betty made it sound too easy. Adriana felt uneasy. She didn't want to go to any auction. She was intimidated by the prospect of talking to a strange grown man. But the need for money outweighed her concerns. Betty picked Adriana a long evening gown from her closet. The dress was of a velvet, pleasant to the touch fabric, pulling off looking but with a modest boat neckline. You're not going to a nightclub. She's a charity event, Betty said, picking out matching accessories. The girl took out a string of pearls and a pair of pearls from her jewelry box. Now all that's left to do is pick out the shoes and purse. Good thing we're practically the same size. Why are you standing there? Get undressed. We still have time to do your hair and makeup. Adriana took off her clothes and folded them neatly on the chair. What is this? Betty shrieked. Adriana looked down at herself and saw a slightly protruding tummy. Well, I'm sorry I don't go to the gym 3 times a week. That's not what I meant. You're going out in that underwear. What is it? Adriana took another look at herself. She was wearing a simple bra and cotton panties. You're offering a high-end service, which means everything has to be perfect, from the underwear to the tips of your fingernails. But you can't see anything underneath the dress. You don't understand. If you're wearing 100-cent underpants under an expensive dress, you're gonna feel and act like a 100-cent underpants. Don't you have a decent date night outfit? I'm not dating anyone. Tell me you're still a virgin. Betty grinned. Adriana didn't say anything. She blushed deeply. My friend looked at her and rolled her eyes. Somehow now, I feel like I'm sending a lamb into the wolf's den by taking this embarrassment off. I'll give you another. I have some unprinted sets of them. Thank you, Betty. What would I be without you? It's not a gift. Compensates me for the cost of what I earned. 3 o'clock later, Adriana was fully ready to go out in a dress with her hair put up in soft, large locks, with light evening makeup. Betty's closet was mostly high-heeled stiletto shoes, but Adriana girl picked up a pair of silver loafers on a low heel. You'll still be out of sorts, she explained. Here, Betty handed her friend a silver purse and a small mink cloth. It would be chilly in the evening, and the purse would contain all the essentials: wet wipes to freshen up for her mouth, some money, powder, and lipstick, in case you need to touch up your makeup. And condoms. What are condoms for? Rounded eyes. Adriana, you told me. I did. But just in case, we could use them as a rubber for money. Are you serious? Just kidding. Your jokes are weird. I'm nervous enough as it is. Do you have any valerian? I got something better. Betty took an open bottle of cognac out of the cabinet. One drink, to celebrate your first night out. Adriana took the shot glass her friend held out and drank a volley, mouth and stomach. It burned with fire. The girl never drank such strong drinks, but now she was ready for anything. If it would help with the growing anxiety. Maybe cancel the whole thing. Better stay home and study for tomorrow's exam. How do you cancel? The client will be here in 10 minutes. You're gonna get banned from that site. They'll also lower my rating. You came on my recommendation, didn't you? I didn't know they had rules like that. Well, now you do. Relax, it won't be a big deal. There's a first time for everything. At least you get a chance to see how decent people live and have a decent meal at the same time. Just don't go for the food right away. Wait till everyone's had a drink, relaxed. After that, they'll pay less attention to you. The phone rang. The client's number popped up on the screen. He's here, Betty announced triumphantly. Let me take another look at you. The friend made the girl twirl. Well, everything seems to be in order. Can you join my daughter? Adriana exhaled. She still wasn't sure she was doing the right thing. Go ahead. Pushed her Betty out of her apartment. A few hours of embarrassment and $1,000 in your pocket. Adriana walked uncertainly out of the entryway, frantically clutching her purse, and down the ribbon. Not far away was parked a white Audi, next to which stood a middle-aged man in a tuxedo. The girl approached the car. Hello. Awkwardly, she said hello to Adriana. I'm Michael. And your middle name? The girl was embarrassed. Just Michael. That's not polite. Don't make me feel like an old man next to such a charming young girl. The man laughed. You're much prettier in person than in the photo. He bent down and gallantly kissed Adriana's hand. The girl winced at the compliment. This is not a good picture of me. Michael opened the back door of the Audi for her and helped her get situated inside. Afterward, he walked around the car and sat next to her. The driver started the car, and they drove off. The man noticed that the girl looked a little tense and decided to dispel their doubt. Don't worry, you look very good, he said with a smile. I just haven't been yet. Here, Adriana hesitated and thought that perhaps she shouldn't give away her inexperience at a charity auction so immediately. There was nothing special about it. The first part of the event will be the bidding. Paintings by contemporary artists will be on display. All the money raised will go to the Children in Need Foundation. I know its founder and have long supported his cause. After the auction, there will be a small banquet, after which you are free to go. The man looked at Adriana, but she was so nervous that she didn't pay attention to the way Michael emphasized the word can. This wonderful opportunity to not only enjoy the beautiful pictures, but also to do a good deed. I think you'll like it. On the whole, Michael gave the girl a pleasant impression. The man was about 45. He had masculine facial features and low velvet, clear voices for an honest back. Dark hair was slightly touched with gray. Michael talked about the activities of the charity all the way, and Adriana listened attentively and only nodded, glad she didn't have to keep the conversation going. The girl was nervous as they entered the hall where the auction would take place. She had never been to an auction before and didn't know what to expect. The hall was decorated in a classical style. There was molding everywhere, antique furniture and vases of flowers. A small stage was placed near one of the walls, on which stood an easel with canvases. The paintings were hidden by a black cloth, and only one canvas in the center was open to the audience. It depicted some chaotic interweaving of multicolored lines, "This is the most valuable painting at the auction," Michael explained when he noticed where the girl's gaze was directed. "Its author is a very promising young artist. His paintings are very popular right now." Adriana took another look at the painting and realized that modern art was definitely not her thing. Michael also found a place from where the scene was clearly visible. There were already quite a few people in the hall. They stood in small groups and talked, waiting for the start. Soon the auctioneer announced the start of the bidding. He took turns removing the cloth from the paintings, announced the names of the author and the starting price, and then those present could bid. Michael was also bidding for some of the paintings. Then he would lean to the girl's ear, explaining why he was interested in this or that painting. Adriana was more impressed by the amounts. The price on one of the paintings even exceeded a few 1,000,000. In the end, Michael won one of the paintings. "Congratulations, you have just become the owner of a masterpiece," said the auctioneer, congratulating the man. After bidding, the guests moved to a neighboring room where there were war servers and buffet tables. Here, too, there were high ceilings, columns, and crystal chandeliers. On the tables rose pyramids, champagne, plates with light appetizers and sweets. But what struck Adriana most of all was the transparent grand piano that stood on a small dais in the center of the room. "Did you enjoy the auction?" Michael asked. "Yes, it was very exciting," Adriana replied. "Although I confess that I don't know much about contemporary art. I like your honesty." The man smiled and winked at the girl. Few people in this room could openly admit that. Michael escorted Adriana to one of the tables. The man took a clean plate, transferred some pills onto it, and handed it to the girl. She hesitantly accepted the treat from his hands. "Try it. It's very tasty." The chef of a famous Michelin restaurant was invited especially for this event. Adriana looked at the cakes. They looked so fancy that they looked like a work of modern art. The girl took one from the salad basket and twirled it in her hands, hesitating to take a bite. "Don't be afraid. It's only food," Michael laughed. Ripped off by the man's words, Adriana took a small bite. She was really very hungry, as she was too nervous, and after breakfast she couldn't swallow another bite. After a while, the lights in the hall dimmed. She purposely under the candles. On the stage in the center came a singer who, accompanied by a grand piano, began to perform popular opera arias. Some of them were familiar to Adriana, though she wouldn't be able to answer who the author was or where they came from, so guests continued to shuttle from one table to another, gathering in small groups to socialize. Michael was periodically approached by other participants of the auction. They discussed with the man the auction of paintings, some business-related matters. Adriana did not listen to these conversations because she did not understand anything. She just stood nearby and smiled. At some point, the food on her plate was over and a passing waiter offered her champagne. Adriana didn't like this drink, but apparently it was because she had to try only cheap ones. The Soviet champagne here was surprisingly tasty. She didn't notice how. She drank several glasses. Who knew that drinking that much, almost on an empty stomach, would cause such disastrous consequences for her? For a while, the girl sat on the bed, covering her face with her hands. After calming down, she looked up again. "I found a note on the nightstand. Check out of the room at 12:00. Breakfast paid." Adriana stood up and listened to the sensations inside her body. Nothing seemed to hurt except her head. She dejectedly picked up her clothes and went to take a shower, opening the bathroom door. The girl froze on the threshold, hesitant to enter. The room, to her senses, was simply huge. One of the walls was a panoramic window, next to which stood a snow-white bathtub on golden legs in the shape of a lion's cotton. On the wall hung carefully prepared towels and robes. At the sink in wicker baskets were prepared shampoos, shower gel creams, and other grooming products. There was even a couch. Adriana wondered why would there be a couch in the bathroom. But apparently, the rich have their own quirks. The girl did not dare to take a bath. She limited herself to a quick shower. She used the disposable shampoo from the basket, but did not take a robe. She pulled on her clothes. A long evening gown was clearly an inappropriate outfit for early morning, but the girl had nothing else. Suddenly, there was a knock on the room. Adriana checked. The time was around 9 o'clock. She shouldn't be kicked out yet. She walked uncertainly to the door. Whose room service? Your breakfast. The girl hurriedly opened the door. A middle-aged woman in a maid's uniform put in a cart next to the table and moved the dishes one by one from the cart on the table. There was oatmeal porridge with fruit, scrambled eggs with a fried piece of bacon, lick cake. Would you like tea or coffee? Coffee. Adriana took a risk, if I may. The woman poured fresh brewed coffee from the coffee shop and a china cup. Bon appetit. The maid unfolded the cart and rolled it out of the room. It seemed to Adriana that at the last moment the woman cast a judgmental glance at her. Well, perhaps she just imagined it. The girl looked at the table. The dishes were so appetizingly beautiful that she couldn't resist. It was all paid for anyway. She couldn't throw it away. She calmed herself down and started eating. After a hearty breakfast, she didn't feel so bad anymore. It didn't feel like the end of the world anymore. Oh well, it wasn't that big of a loss. Adriana opened the banking app on her phone and looked at the $2,000 that had appeared in her account in one evening. Back at the hostel, Adriana took a cab back to her dorm. She removed the bedding on her clothes, carefully rolled them up, and put them in a bag along with her shoes, purse, and towel to return to her friend. She saw the missed calls from Betty, but Adriana didn't have the energy to talk to the girl right now. Ted would definitely start you asking for details about the client. And last night, Adriana climbed into bed, wrapped herself in a blanket, and slept till the evening. Betty couldn't stand it and drove to Adriana's dormitory by herself. On one hand, she was worried about her friend. On the other, she was bursting with curiosity. How did it go? The girls met at the nearest coffee shop. How did it go? Betty asked impatiently as Adriana handed her a bag of things. What was it? Well, last night, and the man I saw through the window. Looks good. Suave. The car's expensive, and it's chauffeured. It's okay. Adriana answered uncertainly. From the fleek from the glass. And that's it. Well, what else could be there? The girl looked out the window. She went with him to the event, went to the auction, then the banquet. Then she went back to the dorm. Didn't even have to talk to anyone. Just stood around. You're not hiding anything from me. Betty squinted suspiciously. No. What could I be hiding? Well, he's the one who didn't offer to go on at night. Adriana blurted out. But Betty didn't. Did she write off that reaction as embarrassingly stymied inexperience, girlfriends? No, he didn't. Adriana answered firmly. If he did, I don't remember it anyway, she added to herself. Too bad. What if you'd had a relationship? Do you think he would have gone out with an escort? Do you think many girls from simple families find rich husbands? I don't know. Men, they don't think with their heads, they think with their hands. The main thing is to meet, to hook up. And then, as it goes on, it can end up in marriage. Do you think they need educated, intelligent? The main thing is to be beautiful and not a log in bed. God, what are you talking about? Let's keep it down, whispered Adriana at her friend. What's the big deal? Betty, I don't want to get into a relationship for money or privilege. I'm not like that. I'm looking for love, not money. I'm not willing to sell my body or my feelings for a favor. Yeah, well, of course you're not. But how would you react if you met a real prince on a white horse? A prince on a white horse. Adriana grinned. That only happens in fairy tales. I don't know. Maybe he wouldn't be on a white horse, but in a white Audi. Betty winked. But if a rich guy told you he loved you, would you say no? No, I guess not. But it's not likely to happen. And you know what? Why don't we delete the profile from that site? I can't do that. I'd rather get a regular job that pays 10 times less. I just wanted to help you, but I guess I was wrong. Betty turned away and stared out the window. I'm sorry, Kostya. I appreciate your help, but it's my decision. I tried it and realized it wasn't for me. Well, how do you know? The girl looked at Adriana, pressing her lips together. Did he at least pay you in full? Yes, the full amount, don't worry. Well, at least your financial problems are solved for the near future. Adriana's life had moved on. She had no time to be upset. She was in the middle of taking exams and tests. She had to run after the philosopher to allow her to retake the exams. With the money she earned, she bought some clothes and good cosmetics, and the rest she put on her account. When the session was over, Adriana was finally able to relax. She did not want to return to her hometown, so she gathered her parents that she found a job for the summer, and she watched TV series all day long or went for a walk. The amount in her bank account allowed her to relax and not to look for a job. Somehow, Adriana came across an advertisement for a modern art exhibition. The girl immediately remembered the auction, which was, and suddenly decided that it would be nice to learn more about art, so as not to feel uneducated hillbilly. The next time, having come to the exhibition and paid the entrance ticket, Adriana went to the hall to wander a little. The girl began to regret coming here. She had absolutely no understanding of modern art. She dutifully approached each exhibit, read the title, and tried to understand what the artist wanted to say. But nothing came out. Holding up 6 strange constructions of metal tubes and garbage bags, she suddenly heard a voice behind her, interested in contemporary art. Adriana turned around and saw a tall, dark, bald guy, about 20 years old. "My name is Max," he introduced himself. Adriana hesitantly answered the girl. "I saw that you are very interested in this sculpture. Its author, by the way, is a good friend of mine. Are you an artist too?" "No," laughed the boy. "Just a connoisseur of beauty. To be honest, I don't know much about art, especially modern art. It's hard for me to understand it." "It's much simpler than it seems," Max smiled. "Would you like me to give you a tour? Do you work here?" "No, I'm a visitor like you. But going to an exhibition alone is a bit boring. Now I've got a chance to spend time with such a nice girl, and I've got a chance to show off my knowledge. You won't refuse my offer." "I won't." The young man was very handsome and polite, so Adriana accepted. Max led her through the whole exhibition, explaining in what direction each of the artists was working, what the paintings depicted, and why he considered this or that author worthy of attention. The girl listened to him with sincere interest. Max explained everything in an accessible language and with humor. After, the guy invited Adriana to have a snack in a pastry shop near the art gallery, and they continued to discuss art over a cup of coffee and a piece of cake. Discreetly, switching to you as it started to get dark, Max walked Adriana to the subway. "There's a new exhibition opening next weekend. Would you like to go?" he suggested. "It's free, and there would be a small buffet." Adriana gladly agreed. She wanted to continue her communication with Max, and this was a good reason to meet. "Would you come?" she asked. "Yes, it will be my friend's first solo exhibition. Have you seen one of his works? I have to come and support him today. I can invite a friend." The girl wasn't sure Betty would want to go to such an event, but she decided to ask in case someone would be interested in a free buffet and a chance to talk to a real artist. Of course, the more people the better. "Can you invite all your friends? I don't have anyone in this town but her." "I'll see you next week then." "Yeah, sure. Let's exchange numbers. Then we can call each other beforehand, and I'll pick you up in my car." Adriana sat with her friend at her favorite pizza place. They ordered one large of irony for 2 and drinks. "You're such an ass," Betty exclaimed. "You've been scammed into another date. Got your phone number and almost found out what address you live at. And you still don't get it. Don't be silly. He just invited me to his friend's art opening." "Yeah, sure," snickered in friend. "Now I totally have to go to that opening to see your boyfriend. You say he's cute, and he's got a car. That's not bad. Let's hope it's imported and not some Lada. Which one are you?" Betty gave me a questioning look. Mercantile. Who cares what make of car? The main thing is to have a good man. Betty rolled her eyes. Oh, I forgot that you are an adept of pure high love, and all worldly things are alien to you, but certainly not the first in importance. Suit yourself, it's a waste of time to argue with you. Betty stirred her cocktail in her glass with a straw. Saturday's still 4 days away. I'm gonna die of curiosity. You should at least take a picture of the guy. How can I take a picture of someone I just met? How? Secret. How are you doing, by the way? Adriana decided to change the subject. I thought you said you met a handsome guy at a club who took you for a ride in a Ferrari. Forget it. The Ferrari was a rental. I suspect the rest of his wealth and business stories. Lies. Imagine, I found out by accident I saw this Ferrari at a popular tire blogger's photo shoot, so maybe the cars just look alike. Exactly. Its color and most importantly, the license plate match. And in the post, there's a link to a rental company. I went to their website and saw this car in their catalog. I'm sorry. And now I talked to him. I also just blacklisted his number. He may be handsome, but I'm not wasting my time on some lowlife. Despite the harsh words, I looked sadly out the window and continued to mix, almost leaving ice cubes in my glass on the day of the event. Betty insisted on helping Adriana with her clothes and makeup. Otherwise, you'll still be going there in jeans and a fatty. Declared her friend from the doorstep. I'm not that stupid. I have a summer dress and a sweater. It's that salute to grandma's youth. Forget it. But why retro? Retro is kind of in this season's trendy length. I just brought you a couple of matching ones. Come on, get undressed. Let's measure. Adriana put on a long dress made of light, flying fabric with a floral pattern, and perfectly put on her white sneakers will be just right for summer. Do sneakers go with dresses? They do. They do now, and they wear sandals with socks. Betty was eyeballing the contents of the pay closet in the reindeer room. Here's one to put on top of that. She tossed her jacket into Adriana's hands with her jeans. Betty herself was in a dark blue dress and shirt that matched her red hair stunningly. And of course, stiletto heels. It seemed to Adriana that her friend walked only in stilettos and did not recognize other shoes. She even had winter boots with such heels. She sometimes envied Betty's graceful walk in them. She couldn't even take a couple steps herself. She'd be back, as her friend liked to tell her. What's the holdup? Your max is half an hour away, and you're not wearing makeup or hair. Betty sat the girl down in front of the mirror. He's not mine. Adriana corrected her. We'll look at the car and decide whether he should be yours or let it go by, although it's not a bad idea to run the license plate. There's a lot of crooks out there. The last incident must have hit Betty hard. She kept thinking about the Ferrari and its owner. Max called and said he was on his way. Adriana and Betty were stomping around the dormitory entrance when a white, shiny Lexus pulled up beside them. The latest model whispered loudly. Adriana's friend leaned in close to her very ear and poked her in the side with her elbow. I didn't know you were so good with cars. It's certainly more useful than the crap we took in the philosophy exam. The driver's side door opened, and Max emerged from the Lexus. Hi, the guy said hello. And you must be Adriana's friend. Yes, my name is Betty. The girl extended her hand to shake. Max is very nice to meet you. Adriana's told me a lot of things about you. Hopefully only good things, laughed the boy. You bet. The gala begins in half an hour, so we should hurry, Max gallantly. He opened the car doors, helping the girls to sit on the back passenger seat and Lena in front next to the driver. As the guy walked around the Lexus to get into his seat, Betty looked at Adriana through the rearview mirror, raising one eyebrow. Not a bad catch you got there, girlfriend. There you go again. Adriana blushed. Max got into the driver's seat, started the engine, and the car pulled smoothly into the street. Do you, Betty, like art? The boy asked. Actually, I'm studying to be an art historian. Oh, then you should really talk to Ethan. He's very interesting about his work. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. And you can tell us a little bit about his work?" Adriana asked in advance. "I'd rather not," Max replied. "You have to see and feel it for yourself." Ethan works in different genres and styles. Each of his works is a separate world that you have to explore and interpret for yourself. "It sounds very exciting," smiled Adriana. All the way Max amused the girls by telling funny stories from his life and the lives of his friends. The time flew by unnoticed. Finally, the car stopped. Already familiar Adriana building. Max helped the girls to get out, and together they went to the main entrance of the art gallery. The doors were open, but the passage was blocked by a red ribbon. "Wait," the guy said. "I'll go in and say hello to Ethan and ask him to let you in early before the opening." The girls stayed on the steps, with small groups of people standing on the wide porch. Apparently, they'd come to the event too. Some were dressed smartly, and some were dressed rather oddly. "That's fashionable now, too," Adriana whispered to Betty, nodding toward a girl dressed in a chocolate and purple hoodie, green tights, and bright orange shoes. A headband with large delirious flowers completed the picture. "No," her friend also whispered back to her. "Probably some kind of artist. Creative people often have rather strange tastes, and they don't follow fashion." Max came back and beckoned them inside. "Come on in. The opening's a little delayed. There's a slight problem with the lighting in the main hall, but they've promised to fix it in the next 10 minutes. In the meantime, you can sit down, relax, get your drinks, and they're serving cocktails. I could use a hit right about now." Betty took a seat on the gray cube of concrete that played the role of a banquet here. "No," laughed Max. "There's only plain water, mineral water, and morsels. Later at the buffet, there will be champagne and diarrhea. Well, we'll have to be patient and wait for the buffet." The girl took an advertising booklet from the nearest counter and began to study it. Adriana walked over to Max and whispered quietly to him, "Just don't take offense at Betty. She's just kidding." "I don't take offense. I've already realized it's her usual way of talking. She's a very interesting young lady. Ethan likes that kind of girl. Maybe they'll hit it off. Oh, I don't know. Betty has very high standards for guys." "Max, you're not alone tonight." There was a man's voice behind me. The young men turned around. "Adriana, Betty, this is Ethan, the artist we're here to see. Nice to meet you. I hope you enjoy it. No tomatoes, no eggs. I'm against the waste of food. If you don't like something, you better write about it in the book. I'm happy to read anything." Ethan was dressed in ripped jeans, a t-shirt, stretchy gray cardinals, and white, leather sneakers in multicolored paint stains. The image was completed with a long scarf wrapped around her neck several times. "It's a pleasure to meet you," Adriana said. "Congratulations on the opening of the exhibition." Betty, to the girl's surprise, remained silent. She didn't even get up and walk over, but only looked at the young artist from afar with a strange expression on her face. "Ethan has been fixed. Can we start?" the girl shouted, looking back from the hall. "Great. Everyone's been waiting for this." After the opening ceremony and ribbon cutting, the guests scattered in groups around the room. Betty immediately left Adriana and Max alone, deciding that she would not interfere with the couple's relationship. After looking around the exhibit and taking a glass of champagne from the magic table, the girl went out onto the porch. Her mood today was riddled with trouble, and the culprit for this was suddenly behind the girl Betty's back. Ethan called out to her. The girl continued to stare off into the distance, ignoring the guy. "Maybe we could talk. I thought we had a very nice evening then and liked each other. But you suddenly started ignoring me and added me to your blacklist. I don't want to impose, but just tell me what I did wrong. And you don't even realize it." Betty turned sharply toward Ethan and folded her arms across her chest, staring at him with one eyebrow raised. "If I did, I wouldn't be coming at you like this. Girl, I'm a cheater. Don't want no business with you." She tried to walk past him back into the gallery, but the guy held her hand with the boys. "When have I ever cheated myself? At least with the Ferrari. It's not your car. I never said it was mine. Renting a car, it's not a crime anymore. It's renting a car, dressing up nice, and making up lies about some successful business. That's fraud. Ethan grinned. But who's to blame if girls want to meet successful businessmen instead of artists? Betty squinted his eyes. What are you implying? I'm not. Just stating a fact. Anything with a Ferrari. Then you wouldn't even look in my direction. The girl looked him right in the eye. Yeah, I'm looking for a rich guy. I don't think an artist can provide. I need a standard of living. Why? If an artist, then at once beggar and hungry would be not beggar, you would have your own Ferrari, not rented. The girl wrenched her hand away, tucked her chin, and walked past Ethan. The guy looked at her and grinned. After the event, Max offered to take the girls home. But Betty refused. First of all, she didn't want to disturb the young people, who clearly felt sympathy for each other. And secondly, she wanted to unwind and get rid of the heavy feeling in her soul. The girl went to the embankment, bought coffee at a stall, found a bench to sit on. Looking at the river, the evening breeze, pondered her face, and played with the former from the hairstyle tousled. Betty ate, lived. It was getting chilly, and suddenly her jacket fell over her shoulders, and Ethan sat down next to her. Betty turned away from him in the opposite direction, but she didn't throw off her jacket. The girl was really cold, and the jacket immediately warmed her with someone else's warmth, as if she had found herself in a hug. The guy did not try to talk to her, but just sat next to her. That's how they spent almost half an hour in complete silence. The coffee was knocked out, but Betty kept holding the long frozen cup. Let me walk you out. Ethan finally broke the silence. Again with the rental car. Betty grinned. No, today I can only walk to the bus stop or the subway. The girl stood up. She took a few steps and turned around. So, we're sitting. Let's go already. Max and Adriana began to communicate more often. They exchanged messages every day. And sometimes Max invited Adriana for a date to the movies, to a jazz night, to dinner in a cafe, or just for a walk around the evening city. Each time the guy accompanied the girl to the dormitory, where they parted, promising to write to each other the next day. This evening Max and Adriana stopped not far from the entrance hall. Today they were at a youth theater production, and afterwards they walked the streets darker with sky, talking, laughing, and exchanging gentle, as if casual touches. They didn't want to part from each other at all. But in Adriana we had a strict curfew in our dormitory. Max stood in front of the girl and took her hands. Adriana, I would like to ask you something very important. Yes, the girl's heart fluttered in sweet and deadly anticipation. It seems to me that we are very well suited for each other, and I would like to propose you to date not as we are now, but already as a couple. Adriana was so happy that she immediately agreed. The young people embraced each other warmly in the cool evening air. Then Max gently pulled away, leaned towards the girl, and kissed her tenderly. It was a very light, gentle, and almost innocent kiss. Girl, you come in. The gruff voice of the janitor broke their embrace. The young people bounced away from each other, blushing. On closing up, Run, Max said to the girl. Text me. Yeah, sure. Adriana waved him off and ran into the dormitory while the janitor took the door. The girl from behind the glass partition sent Max an air kiss. He pointed to his smartphone. Once again, I reminded Adriana to remember to send him a message, to which the girl nodded and smiled happily. On Sunday, Adriana woke up feeling dizzy and nauseous. What's wrong with me? She thought. I must have eaten too much. Yesterday evening, Max took her to a new pastry shop. There were such amazingly delicious cakes that the girl couldn't resist and ate 3 of them. The girl took a digestive pill, but she didn't feel any better. She continued to feel sick. After lunch, Adriana began to sort through her textbooks. Some of them needed to be returned to the university library. She looked at the calendar and suddenly realized that 5 days ago, she was supposed to get her period. The girl sat on her bed in a daze, afraid to even think about what that could mean. Suddenly, the phone rang. It was Max. Adriana picked up the phone with shaking hands. "Hello, baby." She heard the gentle voice of her lover. "Do you want to go for a walk? It's beautiful weather today, and there's a concert in the open air in the park." "I'm sorry, I don't feel well. I'd rather stay home." "Okay, feel better. Do you need to buy some medicine?" "No, thanks. There's a drugstore just down the street. I was just about to go there." "Oh, okay. But if you need anything, or if you get worse, just call me and I'll be right over." "Thank you. I love you. I love you too, babe." Adriana didn't even realize how she'd gotten to the pharmacy and back. Everything seemed unreal. She went to the bathroom and took the package with the pregnancy test out of the bag. Shaking hands, opened it, and read the instructions. The few minutes of waiting seemed almost an eternity to Adriana. She looked at the test, and her insides shivered. 2 strikes. The girl sat down on the tile on the floor. What was she going to do now? How could this be? She thought that night in the hotel had long been left behind and forgotten as a terrible dream. But that monstrous mistake came back to her. Adriana repeated the test, almost not hoping for a different result, and when she saw 2 strikes again, she cried. "I really am pregnant." She realized she wasn't ready for motherhood. Does not know how to explain to her parents what happened, and where is the father of the baby, and what to say to Max. Adriana made an appointment with a gynecologist after an ultrasound and taking all the tests. The girl came to the appointment again. "What are we going to do?" "We leave it," asked the doctor, and looked at Adriana. The girl did not understand the question. "Do you want to keep the baby or abort it?" "I don't know." "Who knows?" "Girl, this is your child." "Not my father was informed." "Not yet." Adriana was ashamed to admit that there was no father. "Well, there is, but she knows nothing about this man except his name." "Well, talk to him and decide together. There's still time until 12 weeks. In the meantime, let's get you registered. Go down to the registrar's office, and you'll be registered." Adriana came out of the women's clinic with exchange cards and a pack of referrals for tests in her hands. She was still in a daze. When she checked her phone, she saw 14 missed calls from Max and a lot of messages. After that conversation on Sunday, Adriana had stopped answering him. She didn't know how to talk to him now and look him in the eyes when she met him. The girl hesitated for a long time, but decided to call her friend to meet her at their favorite cafe. She just didn't know anyone else she could tell about her situation. "What?" exclaimed Betty, and other customers began to turn in their direction. "You're pregnant. Can you yell any louder? So everyone can hear for sure." And you smirked faster, girlfriend. "Does Max know yet?" "No, of course not. I don't even know how to tell him." "That's the biggest problem. This is such a chance to marry a rich guy. Or do you think he's gonna be against the baby?" "That's not the point. The baby's not his cookie," Adriana admitted. "No, it's not." A friend was stunned. "Wow. It turns out there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. Who else did you hook up with?" "You didn't tell me." "Spit it out." "I'm not embarrassed about it." That Adriana was silent, trying to gather her courage. "A client. But the one I went to the charity auction with." "Wow, Betty. You said you didn't agree to sleep with him." Adriana cringed at the frank wording. "I didn't. I wasn't lying about that. But I was very drunk." The girl covered her face with her hands. "I woke up in a hotel room. Alone. And I don't even remember how it happened. He paid me, if that's what you're wondering. God, it was like I was in a soap opera." Betty finished drinking her juice in one gulp. "What are you gonna do now?" "Go find that client and get him to make it up to me. That way he'll say I agreed to it. But you know, a grown man should know how to protect himself and be responsible in case of something. I'm not gonna look for him. He's a complete stranger to me. He'll think I'm a fraud. But I'll have to part with Max too." "You're crazy. Just get an abortion." "No. What are you doing?" "I can't do that. I've thought about it. but I can't. Oh, Adriana. Then tell Max it's his baby. Yeah, I've known him for less than 4 weeks. How can that be possible? Don't tell me you haven't had one yet. Adriana turned away and looked out the window with the cool, rich guy. You're all hand-holding. And with some strange man she got drunk the first night and went to a hotel. Don't waste your breath. I feel bad enough as it is. If you want to keep this baby, you just have to seduce Max right away. There's still time. And then you can say he was born prematurely. I don't think it's possible to hide the doubt in her voice. Adriana said, Men don't know shit about this whole women thing. Just go to the doctor. Don't show your medical records. What if it comes out later that I lied? That would be even worse. Well, when it does, then you can deal with it. No, Betty, I can't do that. I'm gonna call Max and tell him we're gonna have to break up with the baby. I'll manage somehow, and I'll take one. I'll get a part-time telecommuting job. I still have some of that money left in my account. Oh, Adriana, if I were you, I wouldn't let this opportunity go. But you're not in my place, sadly said the girl. Adriana couldn't get herself together all evening. She walked around the room, finding one thing to do and another to do. The girl had already decided that she would talk to the guy the next morning. But suddenly Max called herself. She stared at the phone for a long time, hesitating to answer the call. Hey baby, how are you doing? Hey, what's wrong? Do you sound sad? He asked. No, I'm just tired. I decided to do the assignment they gave us for the vacation. Studying is important, of course, but you should pay attention to rest. That gentle, caring tone. Tears came to Adriana's eyes. She really loved Max, and the thought of a forced separation made her heart clench. My father received an invitation to the Philharmonic for the performance of a famous symphony orchestra. He can't go, so I'm inviting you. The concert will be on Saturday evening. Adriana gathered more air into his chest and exhaled. I'm sorry, I can't go with you. I understand, baby, if you're tired, you really should rest in a more peaceful environment. Then what day can we see each other? I've missed you so much. I'm afraid we can't see each other anymore. Max, I want to break up, which the guy didn't immediately realize. Wait, Adriana. I don't understand what happened. I did something wrong. But can you just tell me? No, it's like this. You're wonderful, and I'm grateful for the time we spent together. I've really had a lot of fun with you, but this is about me. I don't want to continue this relationship, so I suggest we break up before it goes too far. On our last date. That's not what you said. Things are different now. I'm sorry, Max. I'm really sorry. I think you can easily find someone better than me. Adriana pressed the red cancel button and added Max's number to her blacklist. After that, the girl fell on the bed and cried bitterly. That evening, Betty chose her outfit especially carefully. She looked herself in the mirror, expensive branded dresses, intricate hairstyles, light, evening makeup, shoes, of course, on stiletto heels. Everything, in her opinion, looked perfect. The girl snorts. Who did I work so hard for tonight? She asked her reflection. God, Betty, I think your standards have dropped. The phone rang. The contact was saved by Betty as a cheater without a Ferrari. The girl didn't bother to answer the call, but picked up her purse and jacket and walked out of the apartment. A bright yellow Lamborghini was waiting for her downstairs. Seeing it, Betty rolled her eyes. She walked around the cars and sat next to the driver. Ethan was wearing his now familiar black jacket with a t-shirt and jeans today. Where shall we go? You choose. The girl turned away to the window. You might not be able to afford what I suggest. Probably spent all of it on the rental car. So I get to choose. Ethan smiled slyly. Betty turned to the guy, squinting his eyes. There was clearly a catch in his words. Half an hour later, the girl regretted that she had let things go. Ethan had taken her to a place on the outskirts of town where she could park close to the shore. And now, holding paper bags of fast food, was walking down the rocks toward the water. A disgruntled Betty stopped next to the car. Even if the girl wanted to walk up to the shore, she couldn't. She was in stilettos. "Is this that kind of revenge?" asked the girl as Ethan walked back to the car. "Do you want me to break my legs?" "Revenge? You're right. But we'll do without broken legs," replied the guy. "Ouch," shrieked Betty, when Ethan picked her up in his arms and carried her. "What are you doing?" "Saving your legs and heels," laughed the guy. Betty blushed at how tightly he held her against him. After a minute, Ethan set her down on the sand by the water. The concrete slab was already covered with snacks, coffee cups, and soda cans. "I don't eat this stuff," Betty said, sitting down on the edge. "It's got a crazy amount of calories." "It's your right," Ethan said, to take a bite out of the hamburger. "We poor artists don't have a choice." Betty looked around. They were alone, but judging by the number of abandoned bottles, this place was frequented, which wasn't surprising. The view from here was marvelous. The scarlet sunset was already burning. Dusk was thickening and the burning lights of the city on the opposite shore were getting brighter. A cool breeze ruffled her hair. Betty shivered as she shivered from behind her plaid jacket. She glanced at Ethan, who was appetizingly, "Yes," and gave her hamburger. "All right, what else you got there?" The guy laughed and handed the girl a bag of fries. She picked up on a few slices and sent them into her mouth. "I'm just hungry. I'm not going to be able to eat at a restaurant tonight, by the looks of it." "How do you know that all of a sudden?" "I have a restaurant next." "Oh, come on." Betty waved her hand and unwrapped the hamburger, which seemed the smallest. After dinner on the beach, Ethan drove Betty to an old building in the center of town. "What are we doing here?" the girl inquired wearily. "Don't worry, I'm not some maniac. I just wanted to show you my workshop." We had to go up to the top floor on foot. There was no elevator. Betty once again cursed Ethan to himself. When she picked out her shoes today, she hadn't imagined she'd be in for such an ordeal. The guy opened the door and invited Betty to enter. The girl was amazed. Stepping over the threshold, she found herself in a large room. The walls that were painted with bright colors. On the floor were sculptures made of metal and wood. Some of it was hidden by cloth. Other paintings were set against the walls. In one corner stood a sofa, a dresser, and next to it a table and several antique chairs. Bend their legs from the high ceiling, decorated with moldings hanging luxurious crystal chandelier. In this room, the antique and modern were surprisingly harmoniously combined. "Come on in, you can keep your head down," nudged Ethan, frozen on the threshold of the girl. "If you want the bathroom, the room, it's to the right." He pointed to an orange door that one might not immediately notice. In such a chaotic environment, Betty decided to take advantage of the offer. When the girl returned to the room, Ethan had already managed to get the wine out, arranged the fruit, cheese. All this he put on the table, covered above with a tablecloth. "Please," he invited the girl in. Betty sat down on the couch and looked at the guy suspiciously. "Is that so? Have you been seducing your sitters here?" "No, there are no models here." Ethan laughed. "I'm an abstractionist. It's not like you're inviting them for inspiration. I prefer other sources of inspiration." The guy handed Betty a glass of wine. The girl accepted it and prepared it. The wine was fruity, very tasty. "Ethan," he sat down next to her and chugged his glass lightly with the ocean. The guy relaxed, leaned back on the back of the couch and sipped his wine, looking intently at the girl that defiantly she asked him, trying to hide the awkwardness. "I thought I understood those artists who are inspired by a woman's beauty." He suddenly moved closer to the girl. Betty looked into his eyes and felt her heart begin to beat faster. Not that she didn't understand how such invitations to come over for tea, much less a glass of wine, usually ended. To be honest, Betty didn't mind this development. Ethan was very handsome, after all. But now was the moment when she had to decide whether to refuse tactfully, get up and leave, or let things go. The girl closed her eyes and felt a warmth touch her lips, flavored with wine. When Ethan woke up, Betty was already getting dressed. The guy stood up and helped her reach the zipper of the dress in the back. Afterward, he leaned over and gently kissed the girl's naked shoulder. "When are you going to be free?" Betty next freed herself from his arms, fixed her hair, and turned around. "I think we should stop now. You're a nice guy. But that's not what I expect from a relationship with a man. I thought we liked each other. Yes, our relationship got off to a bit of a bad start, but I don't want to build a relationship on emotions and feelings alone." Emotions were a little unreliable from Betty's point of view. She remembered the fondness they had for each other. Her parents, how her father constantly professed his love for her mother and gave her bouquets, but that didn't stop him from having a mistress and then leaving the family. When Betty turned 11 during the divorce, he demanded to divide a cozy 3-room apartment in which with such love and care her mother made repairs, selected wallpaper, furniture, curtains, and other small things. After the exchange, they ended up in a neglected 2-bedroom where a couple of alkies used to live. Betty still remembered how they spent a week just to clean their new place of residence. It had been a long time since the girl had been able to call her new apartment home, and the pain of her father's betrayal still lingered in the back of her mind. And Betty swore to herself that she would not build her family on such a shaky foundation as love. "I have other plans. Sorry." She picked up her purse from the table and headed for the exit. After a while, the guy heard the door slam. Ethan's first impulse was to hold her back, but he was immediately overcome with both resentment toward Betty and disgust at himself. Girls who judged men by their status and wealth had always made him squeamish, but now he had fallen in love with one of them, and so much so that he was willing to forgive her anything. "But what did she have to do with you?" he asked himself. "You're a fool, Ethan. There are tons of them around. Take your pick." His gaze fell on the blank canvases against the wall. He had 2 ways in his life to discharge the accumulated emotions. To keep them inside, he had no strength to go to a nightclub or to paint. Clubs weren't working right now, so that left the second option. The guy rummaged through the dresser, pulling out old sweatpants and a t-shirt. He got dressed, put a box of paints in front of a blank canvas, and froze with a brush in his hands. He closed his eyes, trying to more accurately visualize the elusive image that had arisen in his head. Adriana was well aware that locking Max's phone was not enough. The guy knew where she lived, so the girl decided to leave before the beginning of the next semester to her hometown to her parents. She packed all the necessary things, called Betty to warn about her departure, and went to the train station. She bought the tickets right there. On the train, Adriana thought about how her parents would take the news of her situation. They were simple and somewhat conservative people. For them, the pregnancy of an unmarried daughter could be a blow. The girl pondered over how to tell Malno about her situation gently, but she couldn't think of anything. The train pulled up to the station, and Adriana stepped onto the platform. Here she was met by her father. He helped her carry her suitcase to the car. As soon as she got into the old Lada, she immediately felt at home. "Where's Mom?" Adriana asked. Decided she'd rather stay and set herself up some pastries. Dad started the car. "Something must have happened for you to come back so suddenly. The coffee shop where I was working closed down. I couldn't find a new place. I thought I might spend the rest of the summer in my hometown. It was the right thing to do. Your mother got really upset when you said you weren't coming back for winter vacation. The last time was a year ago. She really missed you. Did I miss you too?" "Very much." 20 minutes later, they were home. "Oh, Adriana, we're so glad you're back, aren't we?" Her mother shook her arms and hugged her. "Me too." Adriana snatched her mother with her hands and felt the defense in her eyes as the women pulled away. "Come on, get undressed. We hands and pass. I'm here pies and Staples your favorite with cherries." "Dad has already told," smiled the girl. Naturally, the treats were not limited to pies. Adriana was poured a plate of dark red thick borscht with a big spoonful of country sour cream. For the second was a huge fried potatoes, sachkam, and mushrooms to tea. In addition to the promised pies, 2 kinds of 2 carcasses with cottage cheese and stew. In the evening, her mother helped the girl to arrange her things. Adriana hesitated, but realized that she could not and put off this conversation for long. "Mom, I wanted to tell you something. Just don't worry." The woman put her hand to her chest, sat down on the bed. "That's the kind of warning that makes me worry the most. Do you owe anyone money?" Sam's neighbor's son borrowed some money and couldn't pay it back. So his parents got a visit from those adjusters. They must be the debt collectors. "No, Mom, I don't owe anybody anything." This is a different me. I told my mother Sam's story, and she forgot what she wanted to say. Anyway, pregnant. I'm like this. Adriana sat next to her mother on the bed in the usual way everyone gets pregnant. "How come, daughter?" And the institute. The girl thought that they would start asking about the father of the child. But the first thing that worried the woman was Lenina's studies. What to do with him now? Nothing. I'll take him as one. Or can I transfer to a correspondence course? Or the girl sighed, doomed to have an abortion. The term still allows. What abortion? You're crazy. Shrieked the mother and covered her mouth with her hand, cowering at the closed door, behind which in the living room the father was watching soccer on TV. You have to have a baby. If that's the way it is. The woman went to the door, looked out, made sure her husband was so engrossed in the match that he couldn't hear anything around him, and returned to Rick. "Who's the father of the baby?" "He's a nice guy, though." "No father." "Well, he doesn't know, and I'm not going to tell him." "He'll want an abortion for sure." "Oh, my daughter, that's the situation. But don't worry, we'll help you with everything." The woman put her arm around her daughter's shoulders. "You just don't tell him yet, because he's a man with a temper. I'll think of a better way to tell him." Adriana warmed and relaxed in her mother's embrace. She snuggled up to her mom, resting her head on her shoulder. "Mom, I missed you so much. I missed you so much." Her mother soothingly stroked the girl's back. The new order from the website arrived just in time. Betty was running out of money. Tonight she had to escort her regular client to some anniversary party. The theme of the evening was the sea. That's why Betty chose a dress with blue and turquoise stitched on it. She complemented it with a pearl garniture. Today she did not collect her hair in a hairstyle, but made it large, soft, localized. Completed the image of a mermaid, makeup blue with green shadows and glitter. The girl came down to the waiting car 10 minutes later than the agreed time. Here at last, and my Michaelia joyfully met her full of cotton candy. Already a novice from the network. A man in his 50s. "Jack, you know very well that girls need a lot more time to get ready." Shook her dark copper mane Betty. "I'm not judging." The man put his arm around her, wiped her down, and escorted her to her car. "We can't be too late for tonight. The banquet will be held on the ship." While the driver drove the car lively at the evening face to the pier, Jack told Betty details about the upcoming event. "Today is the anniversary of my old buddy Benjamin. He owns a chain of business centers and several hotels. He runs the business centers himself. He's kind of handed the hotel business over to his son. Benjamin likes exotic things, so don't be surprised. Every birthday guests have a surprise. Last time they brought a real elephant and a couple of circus lions to the banquet. This year it's a nautical theme. I don't know what we can expect today. I don't think it will be limited to one ship." The guests were greeted by the staff on the rowdy, old Russian costumes. A string quartet accompanied by Betty was already performing on the open deck. Jack came up to congratulate the Jubilee and also said hello to a few acquaintances. Afterward, he let the girl go free, saying that he had something to discuss with his business partners. Betty went to the magic tables that were bursting with caviar fish appetizers, oysters, and other seafood. Actually, food was her main entertainment at such events. Everyone was well aware of the real status of young granddaughters and nieces under aging men. Sometimes she caught interested glances, but getting acquainted and flirting with someone was the epitome of customer time. Betty found it unacceptable the quality of service allowed her to retain some dignity. I didn't expect to meet a beautiful mermaid on this ship today. Betty flinched when she heard a familiar voice. The girl turned around in a panic and met Ethan's gaze. He was thoroughly primped today, dressed in a dark blue shirt, a strict white suit and shoes that had been cleaned to a shine. If she hadn't heard him at first and seen him, she probably wouldn't have recognized him right away. So different was his appearance now from the image of the artist to which Betty was accustomed. "What are you doing here?" "Same as you. Going to eat casually," the guy replied and began to pile delicacies onto his plate. "That's not what I'm asking. You're asking about how a poor artist could end up at an event like this. I have sponsors too," Ethan grinned. "Not as many as you, though." Betty frowned. "I'm in no mood to be lectured by you. I thought we'd decided everything the last time. You're the only one who's decided. All my efforts to build a relationship turned out to be nothing before your plans to find a successful man. Now I see how you're going about it. This coming from someone who uses deception. To meet girls, a girl has lowered one eyebrow. I'm not using deception, just adjusting to the situation." The guy put shrimp in his mouth. "Oh, that's what they call it now. Okay, let's not talk about that. I wanted to talk to you because last time you never let me have my say." "Why?" "It's not gonna change anything." "How do you know?" "Maybe we should give each other another chance." "No, Ethan, I've already explained what I want, and you're not the right guy for me. You're going down the wrong path. Where's the guarantee that marrying someone rich will make you happy? Happiness is different for everyone. My happiness is living without needing money. I think you're trying to fool yourself." Betty couldn't continue this painful conversation and thought of nothing better to do than run to the bathroom. "I'm sorry, I need to step away." She sat in the stall for about 5 minutes trying to regain her senses. Betty didn't want to admit that Ethan wasn't just attracted to her, but had a much stronger hold on her. The morning after the first night, she realized that she had made a mistake in thinking she could give this relationship a chance in the format of easy, non-burdensome encounters. The claw had gotten stuck, and the whole bird was lost, as her grandmother used to say. Betty didn't want to get bogged down in a futile relationship with a young artist, missing a good opportunity. While she was still young, when the girl returned to the Ethan Hall, she could no longer see the lights dimmed there. And the solemn part of the event began. On the small, brightly colored sacred stage came the announcer. Betty felt someone touch her elbow. It turned out to be Jack. In one hand, he held a glass of champagne, and with the other he put his arm around the girl's waist. She sighed. It would be nice if to Ethan's looks she could add financial security to Jack, who had a network of car dealerships. Such a thing was only possible in soap operas. It was the only thing she could do. I grinned at my thoughts, girl. After a small musical introduction, the host announced, and the first to congratulate I invite the son of our Jubilee. There was a round of applause. A young man in a dazzling white suit came on stage. Betty stood there in shock. Don't believe it. It was Ethan. The girl couldn't understand how an artist could be the son of a big businessman. It appeared that he hadn't lied during their first meeting at the club. "Here's Ethan. I've told you about him before," Jack whispered in her ear. "The only heir and the groom." The banquet was nearing its end. The boat has long since returned to the pier, and the guests began to leave. When Betty and Jack approached the waiting car, the man bowed gallantly and kissed the girl's hand. "Michael, thank you for once again gracing my evening. Would you like to continue our conversation in a more intimate setting?" "Jack, I'm sorry. I can't tonight. I'm sorry." By refusing, Betty risked losing a loyal customer. But her mood tonight was in no mood for such a continuation. "It's all right." The man patted her arm comfortingly. "I understand. Let Alex and I take you home." When the car was almost to Betty's house, she asked him to stop. "You can drop me off here. I want to get some fresh air." "Are you sure, Michaelia?" "Don't worry, Jack. It's just a short walk from my house. I've had too much to drink. I want to air it out." The girl said goodbye to the client, threw on her shoulders a light shawl, which almost is not warm, and walked along the embankment. Suddenly, a car braked sharply beside her, and the girl involuntarily looked at it. It was a silver Porsche. Ethan was in the driver's seat. "Why are you following me?" Wanting to make fun of how one foolish girl was lucky enough to meet a rich guy. She blew that chance by taking him for a popper. "Go ahead." Betty turned away and walked forward. The car moved very slowly behind her. "No, I didn't mean to make fun of you at all." The girl was walking on the Porsche, the turtle. The speed followed her. It all resembled a scene from some cheap melodrama. Finally, Betty stopped and turned around to Ethan, folding her arms across her chest. The guy got out of the car and came closer. "So what are you, a businessman or an artist squinting?" Looked up at him. Ethan hesitated and laughed. "We have to pick one or the other." "If that's the case, I guess I'm a businessman. And painting is a hobby. That's the deal I made with my father. I take over part of the family business, but what I do in my spare time, he stays out of it." He and I had a huge fight when instead of applying to economics, I ran away and applied to the art academy. We didn't speak for 5 years, and he deprived me of my content. He kept waiting for me to come running to him. I didn't. Ethan chuckled. "It was hard, but I finished the academy. And then, apparently, my mother managed to talk him down, and he offered this compromise. 'This car is yours.'" Betty suddenly asked, nodding at the supercar. "No, it's a rental again." Ethan pulled the plastic card from his inside jacket pocket. "I'm a member of the VIP car club. Why buy one car when you can try a little bit of everything? By the way, that Ferrari has a month's worth of reservations." That's how Betty puckered his lips. "I still think it's cheating." There was silence between them again. Betty stepped awkwardly from foot to foot. Ethan of EP left the hair on the back of his neck. It must be hard to run a business and still find time to create. It's hard to find people you can trust. If you have them, you can delegate some of the tasks to them. For our hotel chain, we managed to find such people. I just have to find them in my personal life. Ethan looked at Betty. "You're in the wrong place." The girl grinned. "You know my priorities. But you're being honest about it. Instead of playing the saintly simplicity of falling in love at first sight. Usually mercantile goals are hidden behind a fake interest in my personality." Ethan stepped closer and took Betty's hand. "Will you be my girlfriend?" he asked. I don't know. This is so awkward right now and wrong. After everything I've said to you, let's forget about everything and start from the point where we just like each other." Betty cried. The guy pulled her in and started soothing her, stroking her back. "It looks like I changed my mind for money. Finding out your true origins." "Calm down," stepped Betty's nose. Ethan laughed. "I don't care. The important thing is that we're together now." He hugged the girl tighter and pulled her against him, as if afraid she'd run away. Max tried to call Adriana many times, but quickly realized that his number was simply blocked. She didn't answer calls from other people's numbers either. The hostel told him that she was gone until September. They didn't know where she'd gone. Most likely, home. The young man was already desperate and thought that he would have to wait until the beginning of the school year to see the girl. But then at one of the banquets he met his friend Ethan in the company of Olenin and his girlfriend Betty. Max rushed to the girl and grabbed her hands. "Do I need you?" Ethan pushed his friend away from Betty. "I'm very close to you, sure. But I'm not going to let you hit on my girlfriend. You misunderstand. I need her help. I need to get in touch with Adriana. She's not answering calls or texts. She's away for the summer." Betty shook her head. "I'm sorry, Max, but I can't help you there. You really don't know where she is." Ethan asked her and looked the girl straight in the eye. But she was embarrassed. "Maybe I don't know, but she's a friend of mine. She's having some problems that she doesn't want to tell others about. I respect her desire to be alone." Max looked pleadingly at the girl. "Betty, please. This is very important to me. If she has a problem, I can help with that. But I don't know. Ethan realized that the girl was getting weak and was about to give up. Vic, you saw how good things were with Adriana. She was so happy with Max. It must be something serious, since she left everything so suddenly. It's really serious, but it's definitely not something I can tell them, Betty thought. But when she saw Max's eyes like a murdered puppy, she gave up. Max traveled to Adriana's hometown in his car. It took him 4 o'clock to get there. He checked into the hotel, took up his suitcase number, and went straight to the address Betty had given him. He didn't understand why the girl had decided to break up with him so suddenly and wanted to talk to her in person. If she wanted to break up with him, then let her repeat it, looking him in the eyes. She may be in some kind of trouble or problem. The family needs a street and a house. Max was able to find it with the navigator, but Betty didn't know the apartment, and he wouldn't dare show up at her place like that. There's no telling how her parents would react, so the guy parked near the house and waited. The good thing is that there were only 3 entrances, and the courtyard was quiet and not crowded. He waited until late afternoon, but Adriana never showed up. Max was about to return to the hotel when he saw a girl coming out of the first entrance. Adriana ironed the linens. Despite her mother's protests, she took up the task of helping out around the house, which distracted her from her longing for Max and her anxious thoughts about the future. Adriana, Mother came into the room. We're out of bread. I can't get my dad to buy some on the way. So runs away, and good for us. The girl turned off the iron. She did not change her clothes, only took the bags and purse. The girl hadn't gotten far from the entryway when she heard a familiar voice. Her name was Adriana. The girl flinched and turned around. How did you find me? Betty gave me the address. Guilty. Max looked at her, but please don't scold her. I talked her into it for a very, very long time. I promised her it would only be a one-time thing. And if you don't want to go out with me, I'll leave and I won't bother you anymore. Adriana shifted from foot to foot. She was embarrassed by the whole situation and her appearance. She, on the other hand, popped out to the bakery. What was she wearing? Home shorts. Old lady in a t-shirt and slippers. Why don't we sit somewhere? Max suggested, realizing it wasn't a good idea to have a relationship in the middle of the yard. The grandmothers sitting on the bench at the entrance started to look at them curiously, so the guy confidently took the girl by the hand and led her to the car. Adriana did not resist. So much was stunned by his unexpected appearance. I actually need to buy bread, said Adriana, when the guy sat her in the passenger seat and buckled her seatbelt. So we'll go to a place that sells bread. Max fiddled with the navigator and drove the girl to the nearest bakery. There he sat her at the farthest table and went to the counter. 5 minutes later, he returned with a tray with a plate of cakes and 2 cups of coffee. The guy sat down opposite Adriana, who was still frantically clutching the bag and purse. I'll try the brownie. I took the cherry one on purpose. The guy sat down opposite and moved the plate to the girl. He himself took a coffee and took a big sip. There was an awkward silence between the young people. Finally, Max pulled himself together. I still can't understand why you left me, he began. We just don't fit together, Adriana replied. Looking down at her lap, I suddenly realized that we are from different worlds. We have different lifestyles. My family is quite simple. I don't think it matters. If we love each other, Max said, I won't treat you worse just because your family isn't as well off. I'm willing to do whatever you want to do to save our relationship. Please give me a chance. He did, and made her hands his. Adriana raised her head and looked straight into the guy's pleading eyes. The girl felt her heart beat harder. She realized that she still loved Max, but her mistake had come between them. He shouldn't be sitting here making promises to her at all. She should be the one apologizing. There's something I have to tell you. After this, you will hardly want to be together with me. The girl looked down again. Don't you dare look at Max. I don't think there's anything in this world that can make me break up with you. The girl's heart rolled with unbearable excitement like crazy. Anyway, I'm pregnant. Adriana was afraid to look at Max, so she sat hiding her face in her palms. Are you seeing someone else? Or is it your ex-boyfriend's baby? No, it's an accident. I don't even know. The girl felt her face begin to burn with shame. I don't know who the father is. It just happened. You don't. Adriana didn't let him finish. No, it was all voluntary, but it was after the party. I was drunk. The girl didn't feel like she was lying. And it was true. She just wouldn't give Max all the details. So shameful they were me. I don't even know what to say right now. The girl found the strength to raise her head and look at Max. She expected to see disgust, but there was a look of sympathy on his face. But even that was unbearable. So Adriana turned away and looked out the window. See, now you definitely don't want anything to do with a girl like me. Max remained silent, looking at Adriana. He was trying to gather his thoughts. He hadn't expected this. Adriana. Look, he began cautiously. I won't judge you, and my feelings for you won't be affected. The girl looked at him. She didn't notice the tears running down her cheeks. You're going through a very difficult time right now, and I want to help you, Max continued. I will be there for you if you want to keep this baby. I can say that I am his father. Adriana looked at him in surprise, not knowing how to react to the guy's words. Why would you want to do that? I can't force you to take that kind of responsibility. It would be unfair and wrong. Adriana, you're not forcing me. I chose to help you and be there for you. Maybe things haven't turned out the way I imagined, but that doesn't mean we can't be happy together. I just can't imagine my life without you. He took her hand and kissed the palm. The girl burst into tears, feeling a mixture of happiness and relief. Max sat down beside her and hugged Adriana tightly so that she could cry. When the girl calmed down, the guy pulled away and looked at her very seriously. Marry me. That you don't want the baby to be born, do you? So if we tell everyone that it's my baby, no one will even have questions. Why did we suddenly decide to get married? Adriana looked Max in the eye. Are you really ready to do this? She asked, feeling her heart start to beat harder. Max nodded without looking away. I can't change the way things used to be, Adriana, but I can be there for you and the baby. Let's try it together. I promise I'll love and care for you both. Okay, let's try. She agreed and smiled weakly. Max enclosed her in a tight hug again. I'm so glad we can be together again. They bought not only bread but also a small cake. Max insisted on meeting Adriana's parents today. The girl, to be honest, was frightened by this speed of events. Your parents know about the child only, Mom. We were afraid to tell Dad right away. And well, if anything, I'll take all the fire on myself, soothed her Max. Let's hurry up. I went to the bakery. I didn't even pick up my cell phone and disappeared. My mom must be freaking out by now. Having gone up to the second floor, the young people did not dare to call for a long time and stopped in front of the door. It was the first experience for both of them. Max had never had to meet his girlfriend's parents before, and Adriana had never met anyone before. And given her delicate situation, you said Mom's worried, but I'm still kind of scared. Let me make the call. The guy gathered his courage and pressed the button of the faithful bell. A muffled trill sounded from the depths of the apartment. The door swung open almost immediately. A worried mother opened it. Adriana, where are you? The woman did not finish and froze when she saw an unfamiliar young man next to her daughter. I'd like you to meet him. This is Max, my boyfriend. Max, this is my mom, Kathy. Nice to meet you. The guy held out a box of cake. Why are we talking across the threshold? Come on in. The woman stepped back. Max's father came out of the living room when he heard a noise in the hallway. This is my dad, William. Dad, this is my boyfriend. We're dating. We've never heard of any boyfriends before. My dad arched his eyebrows at me. Adriana and I just had a little disagreement, and now it's resolved. Max took the girl's hand. "I came here today to make up with her. And so we decided that we should meet you. My father let Max come through. You can stay for dinner, but you'll have to spend the night somewhere else." "What are you talking about?" his wife snapped at him. "The man came from out of town. Are you going to throw him out on the street so we can't find a place to put him?" "Don't worry, Kathy. I'm staying at a hotel." "That's where I'm staying," the young man reassured her. "Well, here's a waste of more." When Max went to the bathroom to wash his hands, his mother took Adriana into the room and interrogated her. "This is the one?" "Yes," awkwardly, Adriana replied. "You said there would be a baby across the hall, but that's what I thought. And it turns out he agrees and even wants to raise it together. What a joy." The mother splashed her hands. "You're imagining things again, as they usually say about such people, and all you had to do was talk to your young man. Everything is solved. All that's left is to tell your father. Tell your father. Tell him." "That's the hardest part," Adriana sighed. When the women left the room, Max and father were already seated at the table. Mother immediately began to stir. "I'm sorry it's so crowded. If I had known we were having guests tonight, I would have set the table in the big room. Don't worry. It's inconvenient for me to come without warning, but I have to go back tomorrow. I've got a work emergency." For dinner, the family had sautéed chicken and pies with apples. The biggest portions were, of course, Max's. Mother tried to please her possible son-in-law. Father looked at it and grumbled not indignantly, shouted at him by his wife. Max was on the road. Tired, probably hasn't eaten much. The father quickly pulled out a bottle of cognac to drink to the acquaintance, but the guy had to refuse. "Sorry, I'm driving." After tea and cake, the young people looked at each other and decided to move on to the most difficult part of today's meeting with parents. "Do we have a little news for you?" Max began gently. "We are planning to get married." "That's a lot of news." "It's a sign. Before you know it, you're already planning a wedding." The father was clearly displeased. Adriana exchanged concerned glances with her mother. "Why not?" the woman said. "If the children love each other, then love and advice to them, and you're on their side." The man looked at his wife. "What's wrong with that? Nowadays, all independent people without parents decide such things. It's a fact. Let Adriana study first, and then get married. What's the hurry?" Father William suggested it. "We'd be happy to wait, but there is one thing." Max took his girlfriend's hand. "Adriana's in a state." "In what position?" "Excuse me." The father first. "I'm pregnant." "Dad," explained the girl and blushed, lowered her head. "We want to keep the baby so that it will be born in a complete family." "That's the thing," said the father, and again reached for the locker where he had stashed the cognac. Now he was definitely going to drink a shot, or even two. While the man was digesting the news with the help of cognac, the young people discussed their plans with their mother. "Don't worry about expenses. I'll take care of everything," Max said as he said goodbye to Adriana and her family, closing the door behind his future son-in-law. The mother looked at her daughter. "Lucky you, Adriana, and kind, caring, and well-off. I can't even believe how well everything is working out. A prince on a white horse, really on a white horse." The girl laughed. "His car is white." The next weekend, Max came to pick up the girl to take her to meet her father. "Don't worry, he will like you," he reassured Adriana. As they drove to the upscale club village, Adriana was stunned already at the entrance of the mansion. The plot was surrounded by a high stone wall, and on the sides of the gate stood marble leftlexes. I passed a small fountain and smoothly drove into the parking lot, where a couple of expensive cars were already parked. Max helped the girl out and led her to the house along the path along which stood statues and rose bushes. Adriana could not believe her eyes. After all, she grew up in a small town and had never seen such a luxurious large house and garden. "But what did you like?" Max asked, noticing the look on Adriana's face. "It's very beautiful here," she exclaimed. "There is also a cool greenhouse behind the house. I'll show them to you after I meet my father." The young people entered the mansion. The inside was even more impressive. High ceilings, snow-white walls, moldings, carpets on the floor, and furniture that looked like it had just been delivered from a museum. Vases with bouquets of fresh flowers stood everywhere. On the walls, contrasted with the classical furnishings, there were abstract paintings hanging. Max led the girl into the living room. Adriana sat down uncertainly on the very edge of the antique sofa. "Wait, I'll go into the kitchen. I'll ask for tea and some snacks. And I'll go get my dad. You don't have to follow me. I'm already here on the wide marble staircase carpeted in dark red. A man in a lively summer suit has appeared. Dad, you're just in time. I want you to meet Adriana. She and I are dating." The girl looked up the stairs, and her breath caught. She saw her client, the same man she had attended a charity auction with and spent the night in a hotel. "Adriana, this is Michael, my father." The man came down, looked at the girl, but didn't seem to know her. "Good evening, Adriana." He greeted her with a friendly smile. "I didn't know my son had such a nice girlfriend." Michael sat down in the chair. "He only recently told me about your existence." "Dad, I thought you were going to the kitchen. Why don't you go ahead? We're going to have a little chat with Adriana." Max gave his father an expressive look. "Don't worry, I won't eat her." As soon as the boy left the living room, Michael's friendly mask disappeared from his face, and his expression changed to a cold one. The man leaned back in his chair and gave the girls a scornful look. "I never thought my son would be picked up by a Courtney. I hope you didn't meet him as a client." "No, we met by chance at a trade show. In fact, it was my first time here. I just really needed the money. And then I realized it wasn't the right way for me to make money. So I deleted the profile." Adriana nervously rubbed the hem of her blouse. "Don't play games. Here in front of me, holy simplicity. Just tell me how much. How much of what?" The girl didn't get it. "How much money do I need to get you off my son's back? You don't have to tell me about love and stuff. Even if you do have love, it's just a matter of price. I'm not dating Max for the money." Adriana was outraged by Michael's proposal. "When I met him, I didn't even know he was rich. But later you found out." The man grinned. "Stop padding the price. Just name the amount and we'll call it a day. We'll sit, we'll talk. Max will drive you back home. And then you'll call him and tell him you're breaking up." And then Max came back. Behind him, the server's maid entered the living room with a cart. The woman began arranging the tea service and plates of appetizers on the coffee table. Max noticed the tense expression on Lena's face. He sat down next to her and put his arm around her. "So I have something to tell you," the guy said. "Adriana and I have decided to get married." Michael froze with a cup of tea in his hands. "That we love each other and want to live together, to live together. No need to have a wedding at all." You could hear the displeasure in the older man's voice. "How long have you two known each other?" "A few months. That's not long enough to make such an important decision. I'm willing to agree to your living together, but marriage." Michael looked intently at Adriana. "No, Dad, we're getting married. We have special circumstances." Max pulled the girl even tighter against him. "Adriana is expecting a child." At these words, the girl's hand involuntarily rested on her stomach. Pregnant. This news came as an unpleasant surprise to Max's father. "Yeah. Are you sure you're the father of this baby?" "You're the guy who looked at Michael perplexed. Why would I even question that? Adriana and I are dating, and if I don't give my license for this marriage." The man put the cup on the chair and leaned back in his chair, looking at his son sternly. "Then we will still get married, but without your consent. We are adults who can make our own decisions. These decisions are unreasonable. Come to your senses. You picked up some girl on the street, and in a few months you're ready to marry her. I don't know what she's been sharking you with. But please, think again. There are decent girls from good families. It's Adriana I love. I could disinherit you." Michael threatened me. Have you forgotten that I don't depend on your money? Yes, my income can't provide the same standard of living, but I won't be poor. I am really ready to do anything for the sake of this girl, our future child, replied Max, looking straight into his father's eyes. There was an awkward silence in the living room. Michael looked at his son, as if not understanding how things could have turned out this way. Adriana sat next to Max, frantically squeezing his hand. All right, Michael said, rising from his chair and casting a heavy, grim look in the girl's direction. But you must know that you can no longer count on my help and support from now on. You claim to be an independent adult, so solve all your problems on your own. The man left. Max turned to Adriana. I'm sorry you had to endure all that. I didn't think my father would be so set in his ways. It's my fault. That you and him had a fight. It wasn't your fault. The guy hugged her. After a while, he'll cool down, he'll settle down, and then he'll take your kid. He's got nowhere else to go but me. He has no other children. Max pulled away and looked at the girl. He gently wiped away the tears in the corners of her eyes. Don't worry about anything. Get ready for the wedding and the birth of the baby, and I'll take care of everything else. He kissed the girl's forehead. It seemed to Adriana that Betty was looking forward to the wedding more than she was. Her friend was in a flurry of activity, buying wedding magazines, calling a dozen florins all day long, looking through wedding photographers' portfolios like obsessors. Adriana suspected that half of the girl's pleasure came from the opportunity to spend other people's money in unlimited quantities. Today, she dragged Adriana into the bridal salon. Given your situation, we'll need a dress with a high waist. Young lady, would you show me what you have? Bah, sure. The sales consultant returned 5 minutes later with several dresses and placed them on the counter. Let's start with these. If they don't fit, I'll find more options. Betty meticulously examined the offered dresses and took off one of them, white with a long airy skirt, decorated with rhinestones with a not deep semicircular cut. I know you're a smart girl. So what would be the perfect thing for you to try on? It's probably cheaper too. Adriana took the dress and hid behind the curtains, and the example is accurate. Betty rolled her eyes habitually. Stop counting money. You have a rich boyfriend who's willing to pay for your every whim. You need to stop saving money. No one will even notice your efforts. I'd be scared to wear it myself. I might get it dirty. How do I return it? So you're gonna rent it too. Betty's got her eyes on Adriana. Why would I buy it? It's a one-time thing. Her friend collapsed on the couch. I wonder if there's any training on how to fix the beggar mindset. You know, Betty. Adriana peeked out from behind the curtain. I'm used to the way you talk, but sometimes it sounds really hurtful. I'm sorry. The girl was embarrassed. Adriana stepped out of the examples to spin around in front of her friend. But as Betty appraised her from head to toe, something was wrong. Let's do the next one. Try this one, light champagne, suggested the consultant, showing the girls a dress, weave flat skirt, fawn, decorated with small flowers. Oh, there are open shoulders. I don't really like that. Then this one in empire style is very simple, but look at the embroidery on the fabric. The girl spent almost an hour trying it on. Adriana would have picked the dress herself much faster, but Betty made her try them on one by one until she was completely satisfied with her friend's look. But this one, there's no shame in marrying you. I'm glad you like it. You don't like the dress you've chosen. Then you should have told me right away. Betty was embarrassed. It sounds like I made you buy it. No, I do. It's beautiful, but I don't know. I feel like I'm not ready for all this. And Max had a fight with his dad because of me. That's what the girl said. This is not how I pictured my wedding, and I didn't want my married life to start with deceit. Betty stopped and took Leanie in her arms. It's normal. Every bride experiences nervousness and doubt before her wedding. After all, your life is about to change dramatically. But you and Max love each other. That's not a lie. He's even willing to accept your child from another man. Where else are you gonna find the perfect guy? It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Adriana hugged Betty on impulse. Thank you for being here. What would I do without you? Cried the girl. Probably would have gotten into less trouble. Betty joked. Adriana smiled through her tears. You need to cheer up. There's a popular pastry shop nearby. The prices are outrageous. But you and I have a credit on your boyfriend tonight, so we can go all out. Betty took Adriana's hand and led her down the street. On the eve of the wedding, Adriana received a phone call from an unfamiliar number. She answered and warily asked who it was. Michael, let's talk. I'm coming to Cake Alex's restaurant in an hour. I'll send you the address. The man did not even wait for an answer. He immediately disconnected. Adriana hesitated at first, but then realized that between Michael, there is an unresolved issue, with which sooner or later something will have to be done. The girl put on her dress and coat and took her purse. She arrived for her meeting with Michael a little late at the entrance to the grounds. Adriana was met by the receptionist who escorted her to a booth. The girl was wary of Max's father, but hoped he wouldn't do anything in a public place that could hurt her and her child. But what didn't change your mind? Asked Michael, when Adriana sat down at the table. About what? About the offer to take the money and disappear from my son's life. Although I realize the stakes are higher now. There's a baby on the way. Except I'm not sure Max is the father. Aren't you afraid? I mean, it's very easy to verify. I don't think you'll want to check the parentage of this child and Max, Adriana said, pressing her lips together. Outwardly, the girl looked confident, but only she knew what labor was costing her. That apparent calmness. Why was that? Because the child really isn't Max's. Ha! The man grinned. Just as I thought. The child is yours. Michael looked at her angrily. You've got my son wrapped around your finger. And now she's targeting me. But I'm not a simple man. Why don't you believe me? Why would I lie? You said yourself that paternity is easily verified. To hide the excitement, Adriana took a glass of water and made a few gladki. Do you remember how we met you? Or have we already forgotten everything, including the night at the hotel? Well, okay, let's say it's my child. But why would you lie to my son? I can't. Max knows perfectly well it's someone else's child. He agreed to recognize it and raise it as his own. I really appreciate his desire to be a father to my baby. I think he'll change his mind when he finds out you've been working as an escort. Michael grinned. I wonder what he'll say when he finds out his fiancé's baby is his father's. Adriana and Michael looked at each other in the air. The restaurant booth seemed torn with tension. You wouldn't dare. Then your relationship will be ruined, Michael said. I guess at that point I wouldn't care anymore. I had already broken up with Max and wanted to raise this child on my own. But he convinced me to come back. But his relationship with you could be totally screwed up. The girl has become. I don't think we have anything else to talk about. If we both keep quiet, Max and I will have a happy family. And you have the opportunity to communicate with your son, albeit under the guise of a grandson. Adriana picked up her purse and walked out the door of the restaurant. Her confidence had left her. She barely made it to the nearest bench. Young lady, you're not well. You look so pale. Should I call an ambulance? Concerned, a passing woman asked her. No, thank you. I'm fine. I'll just sit here and I'll feel better. The phone rang in her purse. It was Max. Yeah, honey. I went for a walk. The weather's so nice today. Where? I'll send you the address right away. Okay, I'll be waiting. Adriana stroked and visibly rounded her belly. We'll be fine. Baby, we're definitely gonna be okay now.
Subscribe and click the bell.
There was a sense of celebration in the house. It was because Emily was about to become a mother. But at the moment, she was in the maternity ward, and Camille was looking after all this beauty. Camille would show up around the house and click her tongue. She had never imagined that her son-in-law would be so calculating an offer to renovate the nursery himself. And no one had pulled his tongue. It was a personal initiative. At the same time, before that he had not even thought of starting the repair. And naturally, the mother-in-law had vague suspicions. She was somehow wary of the generosity of her son-in-law. He avoided extra money, considering it a waste. But in this case, he made an exception, and even, it seems, went wild. To the fullest, using the services of professional designers. Her daughter wanted a modest interior, but Michael insisted on his version, and it was accepted as it came to his liking, and even pleased the eye with beautiful decoration. Camille sat down and sighed with relief and said to herself, "Now you can live for yourself. The daughter is in good hands. Consider that life is successful." And just at that time, she received a call. And the third one today. I shook my head. She pressed the call button and answered. "Yes, my dear, and I'm listening." Michael's mom hasn't arrived yet. Sounded her question with anxiety in her voice. "Not yet, but I think it will be soon." "What's wrong?" "Are you scared of something?" "I think I'm going into labor today. I'm having contractions." "Daughter, calm down." "I'll soon." Camille got up from the table and started packing. "Don't." "Mom, no one will let you come to me anyway," protested Emily. "I'll wait on the bench in the yard." "No one will kick me out of there. How can you miss such a moment?" "It's better to stay at home. If Michael comes back from his business trip, you'll come with him. While I'm waiting for my son-in-law, my grandson will be born without me. That's the thing, you care. And Michael just left." Emily cried. "He knew I was going to have a baby soon. He didn't stay. His job's so expensive. He can't help it." If Camille calms his daughter down. "It's Mom. I can't talk anymore." The contractions started again. And I realized, my good girl, have an easy labor. She shouted the last words just as Emily actually turned off the phone. Whether her daughter heard them or not, Camille began to pack and put the most necessary things in her bag. Looking at her watch and figuring the last time she called her son-in-law, she dialed his number again. But he answered me, and there was anxiety on my soul, and with it the alarm bell rang. True, there was no time to compare facts and draw any conclusions. Her daughter was probably already taken to the delivery room, and she could not afford to leave her without support. At the same time, a successful delivery took time, and it was not worth waiting until the evening for the baby to appear. And Camille decided to go because her heart was not in the right place. She was so much worried about her daughter that she could lie next to her in the delivery room. She had all kinds of thoughts going through her head. What if the labor dragged on? Would she be able to bear it? Emily was about to become a mother for the first time. And naturally, she felt emotional stress. But a mother in this situation would not be able to help her. Well, except morally, in principle, relatives and friends were allowed to be present at the birth and could stand beside her. Emily would have felt even more attention and care, but they had not discussed this moment beforehand. And now she did not make such a responsible decision on the fly. Calling a cab an hour later, Camille went down to the entrance. We had to wait only 5 minutes before a black foreign car arrived. Behind the wheel sat a man of 35 years old and with a beard. In the back seat, she said hello to him and pronounced, "If it's all right with you, can you give me a little more gas? I urgently need to go to the maternity hospital, and I will pay more than the standard rate. Are you going to express?" The driver asked in surprise, although it was obvious that he wanted to support the conversation in a joking way. "Yes, right here, without leaving the cash register. It's past my time. I'm going to my daughter. She's in labor. And don't ask any more stupid questions, or I'll tell you so much you won't be happy. I'm sorry, I made a bad joke. I'll see you tonight. Don't be nervous. Another thing is a joker, but on the whole, it's not a bad idea, and I'll think about it at my leisure. I have a daughter, but never had a son. That's what I mean." The driver nodded. "I'm putting on more gas. And you say time has passed. Women have babies even later in life, so it's not surprising. Thanks for the kind word. I'll keep it in mind." She thanked him for such a generous compliment. In fact, he and her person elevated all women to heaven and made her realize that age is not a hindrance. For the continuation of the species would be the desire to become a mother, and nature itself will try. And if everything is normal, a healthy and beautiful child will definitely be born. In addition, Statistics showed that it was much easier and simpler for mature women to give birth. By that time, they knew exactly what to expect from further life and were not afraid to bring up a child, at least of that very fear. During the first labor was no longer there. In the maternity hospital, such women felt calm and did not worry about trifles, humbly waiting for the baby to appear. Camille only thought about it for a moment and immediately herself twitched. Her own pregnancy was not part of her plans. Especially 3 years ago, she had buried her husband. And for the time being, she was not going to tie herself with new grim ties in the near future. Among those men who came her way, she did not see a worthy candidate. Most of them were leftist and perpetually dissatisfied with their lives. They had constant doubts about their own prospects. And Camille realized that from such a contingent, we will not make a good one. That's why she decided to live for herself and her beloved daughter. Meanwhile, the cab driver increased the gas. And soon there was a building of a maternity hospital. The roof and windows glowed in the bright sunlight, as if huge spotlights had been directed at them on purpose. Camille squinted, trying to see his daughter in one of them. But all of them, as it turned out, were obscured by half-transparent curtains. Slowed down at the entrance, the driver turned to her and said cheerfully, as promised, with a breeze, "Thank you. I noticed that." She answered him excitedly and gave him the fare. "Can you keep the change? The service is not bad. The jokes are not very good, but on the whole, it's fine. That's what I understand clear and to the point your daughter's successful labor and all the best." Nodding goodbye, Camille got out of the car and hurried to the central entrance. There she was stopped by a guard and asked to wait for the nurse on duty. 5 whole minutes passed before she appeared. "Good afternoon. I've got a daughter on bed rest here. Can I see her at least a glimpse?" "Good afternoon. What's her first and last name?" "Emily is 25 years old. Brown hair." "Okay, stop. You don't need to list her physical appearance." The nurse interrupted her and looked at the list. "I already know who we're talking about. She's in the labor and delivery ward, but you'll still have to wait. The midwives are doing their best. But it's not fast. You know that." "Of course it is," Camille exclaimed. "It's not like you're in a performance arena. We have other women in labor who need to rest. Really, you can understand the excitement and all that. I'm sorry, I'm really nervous. And you said the midwives are trying. Emily's having some kind of problem." "No, it's just that the baby seems to be big," the nurse replied with a smile, and then she adjusted her robe. "Well, this is the news. We will have a rich man in our family. What happiness! I cannot even convey in words. Save your emotions for future congratulations. When your daughter gives birth, then you'll jump with happiness. In the meantime, you have to wait for her first labor. It may not be her last. Thank you, Evelyn." Evelyn is the nurse's name. "Yes, thank you, Evelyn. I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart." Camille nodded. "You're welcome. But the midwives are to be commended. They're the ones who bring babies into the world. It's their most demanding job. It takes a lot of effort and nerve for moms to give birth safely." "That's true. I forgot all about it on the way here." "Well, you'll be expecting, won't you?" "I have work to do. As soon as this miraculous event happens, I'll let you know. Then I'll sit on the bench in the courtyard. There's some shade." The nurse looked at the guard. He nodded and said, "You can wait here. It's not outdoors, and sitting in the heat for so many hours is not the best solution." "Thank you. Good health and prosperity to you." Camille thanked them, and while her daughter was in labor, she sat next to the guard. He entertained her as best he could with funny anecdotes. But they were only soothing for a moment, and then the troubling thoughts would return. And Camille frowned her eyebrows at the thought of her daughter in the maternity ward. At the same time, she relied on the professionalism of the midwives, because the nurse's words about their work gave her cautious optimism. Glancing at her watch, every now and then she turned her head toward the corridor. It was from there that the nurse would appear and deliver the long-awaited news. But as time passed, Evelyn did not return, and Camille became visibly nervous. Her hands shook and her left eye twitched. The guard noticed her nervousness and tried to calm her down. "Everything will be fine. You'll see, our midwives are the best around. It's been a long time since Evelyn's been here. They told you it was a difficult labor. The baby's big, the guard reminded the nurse. Daughter, my darling, may you do well. Camille said with tears in her eyes. Waiting was weighing on her nervous system, and she could hardly sit in one place. From time to time, she got up from her chair to walk a little and stretch her legs. The guard shook his head, but did not interfere with her with his advice. He realized that words could not solve everything, especially the worries of his own mother. So he calmly observed the situation, looking at the crossword puzzle. Meanwhile, Camille went outside again. She needed a breath of fresh air in her temples. Pulse was vomiting and the back of her head was broken. So she could barely contain the piercing pain, and coupled with the worry, it was pressing even harder on her brain. Finally, towards evening, when already patience was at the limit, heard the voice of the nurse, she flew straight down the corridor, and gesticulating joyfully at that. From her look and the smile on her face, Camille realized that the labor had ended successfully. A boy at 3,952 centimeters. A giant. Congratulations. You can see your daughter. It's such a blessing. What kind of happiness? I'm the happiest grandmother in the world now. By the way, am I allowed in her room? Through the glass, look. But if the doctor says it's okay, you can hold the baby. We can allow husbands and close relatives in the labor room. Isn't your daughter's husband here? No, he's on a business trip, shook his head Camille. He was sent away unexpectedly just before the birth. Well, he will be even happier when he arrives. The nurse smiled. Yes, you're probably right, Camille said, almost in a whisper. She couldn't hear a thing. Let's go, and I'll show you to your daughter. But before they went upstairs, they went into a room and Camille changed her clothes. She was given a white robe, a bonnet, and booties. And so she went to her daughter's room. And while she silently followed the nurse, she wrote a message to her son-in-law. Congratulations on your son. 4 kilograms Bogator. But no reply to the message came at the same second. And that made her a little wary. She naively thought that Michael was just waiting to be excited about the birth of a child. But in fact, he was completely in work and was practically not distracted by anything. He didn't even read the message from his mother-in-law right away. Going up to the second floor, they walked down a long corridor and stopped near room number 7. Through the glass, you could see her daughter lying on a special bed, and most importantly, with her next to her was a child, whom she gently pressed to her chest. Crying. Camille looked at the nurse. I'm looking at you and I can't help but let you come into the room. Besides, the doctor said yes, but not for long. And I understand and thank you for your kindness. Having opened the door, she cautiously peeped in and immediately met her eyes with Emily's daughter and cried with joy, holding the child with one hand and beckoned them to her with the other. Mother, how happy I am to have such a son. I only wish Michael could see it. Camille went to the bed and leaned over and kissed her on the top of her head. At that moment, the baby frowned and began to fuss. Without thinking, she took him in her arms and began to rock him, humming a lullaby. After a couple minutes, he calmed down, and there was silence again. Emily rose up on one elbow and cocked an eyebrow. Disgruntled, she asked. He still hadn't made contact. Not yet, no. I sent him a message. Should respond. I called too, but Michael didn't even pick up. Is he so busy he can't even pick up the phone? Don't worry about it. He'll answer or call back. Camille tried to reassure her daughter. And just as she said these words, a familiar music started playing. It was a message notification coming in. Handing the baby back to Emily, she pulled out her phone and began to read. It didn't take her more than a minute to familiarize herself with the contents of the message from her son-in-law. And judging by her facial expressions, she wasn't too happy about it. But something Mom sent Michael. Yeah, you guessed it. I just didn't see much joy. Give it to me. I'll read it myself. Emily demanded her phone and she handed it over. For about a minute too, she drove her eyes around, studying her husband's reply. It contained the following words. Thank you. Wow, I don't have any heroes in my family. It must be some kind of phenomenon. Tell Emily I'll be there soon. That was the end of the message. What did he mean by phenomenon? She never understood it, but it sounded kind of hurtful. like Michael didn't believe it was his son. Emily handed the phone back to her mother and cried, "Daughter, what are you doing?" He just texted that he wasn't expecting such a big guy. I'd be surprised too if I were him. To be honest, we don't have any similar cases in our family. And neither have you. Mom almost screamed at Emily. You think it's some kind of phenomenon too. And the baby's not Michael's. No, I don't think so. I shook my head. It's okay. You can't be nervous right now. Then why did he text me like that? Why didn't he congratulate me anyway? Why didn't he call me? Just be patient for a while. When he has a free moment, he'll do it. And she was right on the money again. Because Emily's phone was interrupted, she purposely turned the sound down so that it wouldn't make noise or scare the baby. Her husband's name popped up on the screen and she immediately smiled. "Hello, my love." His gentle voice sounded into the receiver. "I'm sorry I couldn't attend the birth in person. But you know how I react to such events." "Yes, of course, we have already discussed it calmly and without nerves," replied Emily. "I want to congratulate you, or rather us, on the birth of our son, and wish him good health. And you and I have enough endurance and patience for the rest of our lives. Thank you. That was really nice to hear. But I'm still a little hurt that you left on the eve of the birth. You could have talked to the company and stayed. The director is aware of it, but he just had no other choice." Michael replied with regret in his voice. "And I'll try to make up for what I missed. Love." "Okay, I get it. Work is work." Emily sounded a little uncertain, and it sounded like veiled resentment. "I'm sorry, I really didn't have a chance to come, but I'm traveling back tomorrow. So I'll see you soon. Ethan and I will be waiting for you very much." "Did you decide on that name after all?" Michael asked. "Yes, those two. I canceled them because they don't sound like your middle name." "What do you think? Do you like it? You bet Ethan's bright and presentable, but kisses. Sweetheart." "I have to go to a meeting. And I kiss you, my love, and wish you good luck." Emily pressed the hang-up button and placed the phone carelessly on the nightstand. "What's wrong with you? Are you not happy that you talked to your husband?" Her mother asked in surprise. "Yes and no." He answered dryly, as if he were recording. It was as if he wasn't talking to me, but to his colleagues. "Maybe you imagined it. No, I'm not deaf, and my heart can feel everything." At that moment, the baby stirred again, and she gently put her arm around him and kissed him gently on the nose. The joy of motherhood restrained Emily from harsh words to her husband. And it was telling that she was very nervous. Perhaps because of the difficult labor, or was there some other reason? At the same time, to answer clearly and distinctly to herself what she was worried in the first place. Emily could not yet. She thought for a moment, and it seemed to her mother that her daughter had fallen into a comatose state. At least, that's what it looked like from the outside. And to make sure that everything was all right, she came closer and cautiously said, "Daughter, I still haven't gone anywhere here." "I can see Mommy just caught the silence," frowned Emily. "Sometimes it's actually quite helpful. Just staring at one point and thinking about something. And what would that be, if it's not a secret? Like why I didn't ask him about that message." "Well, you heard him say he was in a hurry to get to a meeting." Your mother shrugged. "Exactly, that's what's important, not my labor." He just pretended to be happy and didn't say anything about his doubts. "As if I did not understand from whom I gave birth to a rich man." "Don't say that, daughter, or we will really start doubting together and it will not lead to anything good. We should be happy, not looking for reasons to fight." "I wasn't going to fight with Michael," I shrugged. Emily was just saying her thoughts out loud. "Let's keep them between us," Camille nodded. "You were so happy when you heard your husband's voice. And now it's irritation talking, fatigue and nervous tension. My mother is probably right, and I'm probably making myself nervous. I just need to relax and not think about sad things. Especially since Michael said he'd be here soon." "Exactly. Maybe he'll pick you up from the hospital too." Irritation and nervousness. Indeed, Emily still hadn't let go, and it made her even more cranky, like a little girl. But that's not surprising. After childbirth, women do not immediately come to their senses. They need time to calm down, and sometimes it drags on for several days. At this time, close people have to show outstanding patience. and none of them grumble. Everyone realizes that childbirth is not a procedure in a space salon, and the most real trials. There have been cases where women have almost lost their lives, and all because they differed in body condition and skeletal structure. Emily, however, was lucky in this respect. She was a girl in a body, and she had no trouble bringing a child into the world. Yes, she had to strain and scream, but it worked. Plus, the obstetricians showed a high quality of skill and ended up helping her deliver a healthy and large baby. "Thank you for being by my side," as always, Emily thanked her mother. "Well, how could I not? I was going through it myself," she smiled and nodded. "And Dad was working at the time too, wasn't he?" Remember, he wasn't. But it was a different time then. He had a new position coming up, and he couldn't just take off. Not even his wife's people, Emily wondered. Even though she'd heard the story 100 times, it couldn't be helped. The country needed professional staff, shrugged the mother. What about the children? They did too. But we didn't have as much support from the state then as you do now. We need to increase demography. That's what we're trying to do. Emily finally smiled, and it showed that her nervousness was gone. It was hoped that in the future she would be able to adapt to the postpartum period. In any case, she would not become cranky for any reason and show her irritation. In the maternity hospital, of course, a lot of things were forgiven and looked at certain things through their fingers. But if any mommy drove the staff to a white fury, they tried to say goodbye to her as quickly as possible and did everything to make her discharge sooner and leave the walls of the hospital. That's when there was silence. However, not for a long time. Literally until the next cranky woman in labor. But they had time to rest and catch their breath. It was not so easy, it turned out, to take care of such patients, and it was necessary to restrain themselves emotionally so that patients did not break. Camille looked at her watch, sighed heavily, and asked cautiously, "What can I get you tomorrow? Red apples and a couple of liters of grape juice. Maybe something to steam." "If only a breast fillet," Emily shrugged. "And don't forget the broth. I'll have that too." "Okay, I'll do it." Her daughter smiled back and took her grandson in her arms again. He calmed down and seemed to fall asleep, oblivious to external stimuli. Camille held him close to her and looked at him with a smile on her face. It was obvious that she was straight, partly as if she had given birth to a child of her own. Emily noticed the tears in her eyes, and she almost sobbed too. "I remembered how you used to read me a bedtime story when I was a child. You looked at me like that and smiled, and I still get chills running up and down my spine. Whenever I see that look, it's hereditary. My mom used to do the same thing, but she told stories not from books, but from memory. And to be honest, I wondered how she knew so much. Every day something new, and not a single repetition. That's a phenomenal memory. So you kept books in your hands as long as your eyesight allowed. I didn't really have a taste for them, and I don't now. Maybe Ethan won't go," and she made an indiscreet assumption. "I don't know, Mama," Emily shrugged. "He's only just born and he's not in the mood for books yet. But if you think it would be good for him, I can read stories to him sometimes. I think they say it calms the nervous system. Who knows, maybe he'll be less cranky. That would be nice, because I have a feeling he's taken over my personality. Just as hot-tempered and emotional. Tell me about it. Sometimes I wonder how Michael puts up with me." Emily rounded her eyes and shook her head. "You see, you already do not scold him and do not get angry," said the mother. "That's a sure sign that you're coming to your senses after childbirth. If you continue like this, they won't keep you here for long. How do you want me to get home as soon as possible? I can't wait to babysit my grandson. Yes, my daughter is a great joy to me. You're all grown up and you don't need diapers. Your grandson, on the other hand, has his whole life ahead of him, and you need to make sure he's taken care of as much as possible. I know, Mom, especially since Michael's made all the arrangements. But at first, my son's still going to be spending more time with us. I don't disagree. But you're going to have to get him used to sleeping in his own crib. And if you don't do that, you'll never get him out of your skirt. So he's my little boy, and I love him very much." After Emily said that, she gestured for the baby to come back. "Okay, go back to your mom. I still have time to babysit you." Hissed her grandson on the cheek, she gently laid him down next to her daughter. Emily smiled back and began to stroke her son in a feminine way. He flailed his brow and made funny lips. It was as if he had been having strange dreams, and they disturbed him a little. There was no cause for alarm, however, and so far she had nothing to worry about. She had been in such a confused state when she had not yet fully realized that she had given birth. She still imagined herself pregnant, and this child was there to support her. Meanwhile, her mother knew exactly what was happening to her daughter at that moment. Exactly 25 years ago, she too had been in the same state. But she came to her senses quickly. Maybe it was her mother's support, or maybe it was my own attitude. Daughter partially adopted the character of her husband, and he could sometimes flare up for no reason. And sometimes it was hard to stop him. No amount of persuasion helped. He then himself calmed down and wondered how such a thing could happen. Naturally, he apologized and vowed to keep himself in control. Soon, however, everything would happen again, and then the household simply did not pay attention to it. They did not take much pleasure in arguing with a man who persisted in his position. It was like beating against a wall that only gave off dust, but still held on. Camille's husband was distinguished by the fact that he rarely ever strayed from his principles. And if he did, everyone sighed in relief and jokingly said it would probably snow in the summer. "I'm going to feed Ethan now and get some sleep," Emily said, getting back on her back. "Okay, well, I'm going to go home and not come back to see you. Everything seems fine there." "No, don't. Michael's coming back tomorrow, and I think he'll be here in a couple days, and I'll probably be discharged by then. So he'll be back in time to pick me up from the hospital." "Good, then yes, tomorrow will bring everything you asked for." Camille nodded and left the room. At that moment, the nurse Evelyn approached her. "But as you can imagine, with my grandson with great pleasure, I wouldn't leave like this. Looking at him makes me want to cry. It always does. I don't have grandchildren yet, but I totally understand. Children are our future, and their future will depend on how we bring them up and what we put into them." Wise words, and I would even say golden. Camille praised her. "And if it's not too difficult for you, then you should reconsider my daughter. She's a quiet girl, but she can get angry sometimes, so I'm worried about her having a nervous breakdown." "Okay, I hear you. And she'll be monitored until she's discharged. Thank you in advance. You're a very kind and supportive person. But there are other reasons for her temper." "Careful?" asked the nurse, and at that frowned his eyebrows. "Well, how can I tell you? For example, the Peoples didn't come." Husband shrugged Camille, although they had discussed this point, but she still hoped that Michael would show up. Not every man can withstand such a spectacle. "My spouse didn't attend the birth either. He said if you want me to fall right on top of you, you can take your chances. And I did not do it because I presented the picture of falling 2-meter man, and I became scared. But not for myself, but for the rest of the staff. Yeah, I hear you. But I still wanted to see him here today. I don't blame my son-in-law in any way. He's a really busy man and he works a lot, and sometimes he doesn't even have time for himself, not to mention everything else. On the other hand, to make it less fussy, he tidied up the baby's room right away." You see, the nurse raised her index finger. He was worried and prepared in advance. Some people only start shopping after the baby is born and buy the most necessary things in a hurry, without considering the unnecessary expenses. "What do you want to say with this?" "To the C in the forehead?" Camille asked. "Well, you can buy cheaper if you know where to go. I mean that if everything is done at the last minute, it's a clear sign of disorganization. And then it affects everything on the relationship, on the child's upbringing, and just on everyday life. I get it. I was thinking about the wrong thing. Thanks again for your support and goodbye. Have a good day. You don't have to worry about your daughter. She's in good hands." Camille took the same route back down to the first floor. The guard met her again and asked her with a smile on his face, "So daughter and grandson." "Everything went well, more than I am very satisfied." Just as cheerfully she replied, "To him it feels like me again." Well, let's not talk about age," the guard interrupted her. "We were all young once. As you so rightly point out, And most importantly, you spoke of youth. I still remember it, and I can't believe that time flew by so quickly. It takes a long time in the beginning, and then it slips away at full speed. Thank you for your kind words. After saying goodbye to the guard, she went outside and immediately dialed the number of a cab. By a strange coincidence, the same driver arrived 5 minutes later. He smiled broadly and said humorously, "We are like two lonely hearts once met, and again we are magnetically attracted to each other." What a joke. You want to laugh and cry. Camille wagged his finger at him, and just like last time, she got in the back seat. "I apologize if I've offended you." He apologized. The driver started the car and then asked quietly, "Are we going to the same address?" "No, I'm going home now. I need to clean up and get a good night's sleep. So my daughter had a baby." "Yeah, a boy, almost 4 pounds. Wow. Wow. He's gonna grow up to be a real big boy, and he's gonna take on all the boys in the yard." "You're wrong. My daughter will raise him with nothing but good and positive qualities." "I don't disagree. But it seems to me that almost all sons follow in the footsteps of their fathers." The driver shrugged his shoulders and at the same time made an assumption about the boy's future. "We'll see. It's too early to make predictions now." Camille nodded affirmatively, and then she stopped talking. The driver realized that the conversation was over, and then they drove in complete silence. Even the music did not play in the speaker, although he always turned on a soothing melody, and only for her he made an exception, because after today's events, she needed complete peace. She hadn't told him that directly, of course, but the look on her face was enough to read her thoughts. All the way there, he kept glancing in the rearview mirror, worried the passenger wouldn't get sick. She talked to him sluggishly and generally looked tired, but that's understandable. All day she sat in the corridor, waiting for her daughter to give birth, did not gather herself, and did not leave with honor, withstood this ordeal. And it's a good thing the guard was so talkative, with his not-so-funny anecdotes. He distracted her a little from sad thoughts, and at the same time did not let her fall asleep. Otherwise, she'd lie right where she was sitting. All in all, it had been a busy day, especially for the nervous system. It was only towards the end when the nurse told her the good news. After that, it seemed, one could not only dance, but also start one's life with a clean slate. However, if Camille had been offered something like that, she would definitely have refused. And first of all, because there would be no Emily in her new life. And she wanted a daughter so much, and she resembled her in every way. And nature responded with a long-awaited gift. That's why she wouldn't have started from scratch. Besides, she wouldn't have all the events and moments she'd been through. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to the right house, and the driver loudly announced the final stop. "Yes, thank you," in a sleepy voice. She answered him and took the money out of her purse. Apparently, she fell asleep and didn't realize she'd slept through the whole route. "Keep the change as always." "Thank you, and have a good day." "You too." I waved him off. Camille entered the entrance and went up to the 3rd floor. Something clicked in the keyhole, and in a few seconds she was in the hallway. No other sounds were even close to being heard. The silence and emptiness echoed from everywhere, as if she had fallen under the ground. Though in fact, that was exactly how she felt now. In the soul from side to side through despair and all, because there was no dedication in the form of concrete cases. There was no doubt that helping her daughter was going to count for something. However, she needed something more. And now with the birth of her grandson, there was a faint hope that she would no longer sit in these 4 walls like a bird in a cage. Camille had recently experienced the full extent of loneliness, and this despite the presence of her daughter, who loved her with all her heart. As it was easy to guess, the whole problem was up for grabs. Michael had a way of pushing people away from him, and yet doing absolutely nothing about it. In other words, a person did not immediately notice that he was alienated, but only after some time, when it was too late to change anything. And Camille was seriously afraid that she would lose the point. Or rather, the opportunity to see her would be taken away from her, and she would be put in front of an uncomfortable fact, forced to accept it as a new reality. Soon, however, the opposite happened, and a series of severe trials began afterward. They fell entirely on Camille and her daughter. Michael, on the other hand, remained on the sidelines and did not take any part in it. He became as if a stranger next to the people close to him. And this circumstance forced them to act in an emergency mode. They had to part with something, but they gained something. The truth, what happened next, proved with extreme precision who and what they were, and one of them had to accept an unenviable fate as punishment for the unforgivable mistake he had made. After shedding her outer garments, Camille went into the kitchen and put the kettle on. I didn't feel like it, but to sip the aroma of another drink her soul demanded. There was such a fire inside that she could hardly breathe in her chest, as if with the discs of an ox, but not from fatigue. This state had nothing to do with today's busy day. On the contrary, after her daughter gave birth, she felt relieved, and she didn't leave her until she got home. And already here a completely different set of emotions arose. They kind of signaled something important. It made you think and compare. And against this background, I drew not the most comforting general conclusions. And that was especially true of the relationship between her son-in-law and her daughter. From the moment Emily became pregnant, he had changed dramatically. If before that he spent all his free time with her, then soon he began to have unforeseen business trips. And not anywhere, but as far away from home as possible and most often in the same city. Emily loved her husband immensely and did not seem to notice the obvious things. And only her mother tormented herself with murky suspicions, but she could not express them because she was afraid of her daughter's anger. Besides, suspicions alone meant nothing. Michael could have had 100 reasons to go on a long business trip, but the fact that he began to do it at regular intervals created those suspicions. They've been building up like a snowball, and they've been building up, and they've been building up to even more difficult thoughts. And in fact, some of them floated near the surface, such as the choice of interior design for the children's room. After all, Michael insisted on his own option, contrary to Emily's opinion, and did not even listen to her. Although she offered not the worst ideas, perhaps not so original, but not empty. From the outside, it would seem that he wasn't doing the upgrades for his son, or he'd gone to the trouble of appearing to be a loving and caring husband. Either way, both versions and all could not be ruled out, because they could lead to the same sad denouement. Among other things, today's surprises about the baby's weight. He was not born skinny, and that, on the contrary, was to be rejoiced over. However, Michael said that he did not have such a stout child in his family. At the same time, he cleverly twisted his arm. When Emily began to demand explanations from him, I pressed on her pain points, and she immediately melted. But then she pulled herself back together and came back to reality. And she was aided by her mother's genes. It wasn't easy to deceive. Only 2 people had ever managed to do it in their entire lives. And her husband wasn't one of them. He only showed character. Otherwise, he didn't even try to get away with it or look for false traces to deceive, only to end up being exposed. After drinking a couple mugs of soothing tea, she still couldn't sleep for a long time afterward. All the same thoughts that had overcome her during the day were in her head and kept her awake. There was a sense of falseness on the part of her son-in-law, but without any obvious signs. Such an impression, as if he skillfully managed to disguise all his secret steps. And they were not even out of the general background, as if they went in unison. At the same time, she saw no reason to relax. It was for her daughter to make a picture that everything was all right. But what was really going on in her soul? Emily was not yet to know. Right now, her condition required not only peace, but also an attitude of positive emotions. Knowing this, her mother remained neutral and did not make any sudden movements. In a sense, she even tried to present her son-in-law with a good side, but slightly miscalculated, because Emily was also not a finger maid and did not believe in the sincerity of her husband, who rejoiced at the birth of a hero. After all, he gave himself away. He doubted his paternity, though figuratively, and did not hurry to make it clear. Why did he suddenly have such thoughts? He could have asked his wife, "Beloved, probably you've had a family of go-getters?" But he did not do that, which spoke of his partial indifference. Well, a big son was born, and that's fine. That's good too. No warm feelings, though. On the other hand, it was pointless to speculate on that alone. and Camille understood that perfectly well. Like 2 times 2 in math. The only thing she couldn't do was put the rebus together. As it was, but with different particles that sometimes didn't fit together at all. And it was necessary to find the key link, especially since it was somewhere very close, right at the surface, in plain sight like an eyesore. But there was no way to look at it from the outside. That's what worried Camille. She knew where to look, but she didn't have enough equipment, and to get them required certain steps. But Emily's mother could not dare to take them yet, and waited for a convenient moment for her son-in-law to reveal himself. However, in the process of disclosure of fate intervened, and without unnecessary effort, all put everything in its place. Michael, soon after his arrival, showed himself in all his glory and surprised not only his wife with this statement, but also those who trusted him without complaint. In fact, shocked his immediate environment, leaving them in complete bewilderment. In the morning, Camille woke up as if she had been broken. A hard night of heavy thinking had taken a toll on her overall health. She barely made it to the bathroom to wash her face and asked herself angrily, "Who makes you think so much?" The question sounded hollow because she didn't know how to answer it yet. Surprisingly, she didn't even have any thoughts about it in her head. It was as if her brain had shut down and was still in hibernation. And to bring it back to its awake state, it was necessary to take a contrast shower first, and then drink a cup of coffee. Camille did just that, but it only partially helped. She remembered what her daughter had asked for closer to lunchtime, and prepared everything in a special container so that nothing would spill. There was broth and a plucky breast. From it came such a flavor that drool involuntarily flowed. She barely restrained herself from opening the container, but instead picked up a couple of sandwiches and skewered them hastily. All thoughts were of driving to her daughter's house and taking her to the hotel. On the way, she stopped by the store and bought juice and a pound of red apples. And with all this good stuff, she rushed to the maternity hospital. However, today she was not allowed into the ward because there was another shift, and she had to pass the package through the duty nurse's post. However, Emily was able to go to the window and wave her hand. You could see that her daughter had recovered from yesterday and didn't look so gloomy anymore. Most likely that she had realized and accepted the new reality during the previous night. Suddenly, she pointed to a nearby window, and Camille realized that her daughter was about to open it. And in a few minutes, they were able to have a live conversation. "Hey, how are you?" "Hi, Mom, I'm fine." And I calmed down. And Ethan doesn't get cranky as much. "Have you fed him yet?" "Yeah, of course." Emily shrugged it off. "He's sleeping now. I won't disturb him yet. By the way, the shift has changed, so you won't see me again until you're discharged, but we can talk on the phone if you need to." "It's okay, I'll be fine. It's only a couple days, and you know it's easier for me to say that than to call." "Okay, Mom, thank you so much for the broth. I'm so hungry for your cooking. It's time for me to learn. Time is of the essence." She smiled and wagged her index finger at her. "Who else would it be for? Michael can't stand the sight of me. I don't need much." Emily replied with annoyance in her voice. And then the alarm bell sounded again. Camille tried to grasp its essence, but she failed. It was as if she had lost her ability to think logically. Everything in her head was jumbled and jumbled like a serialized reel, and she could hardly find the right words. It's never too late to learn. When your son grows up, you'll pass on your knowledge to him. You think he'll want to learn the basics of cooking. Why wouldn't he? Your father could cook, but I didn't let him because I wanted to take care of him. So that's why you were angry when he tried to bring you breakfast in bed in the morning. Emily laughed and wagged her index finger. And not only for that reason shook her mother's head, but also because she considered such an excessive display of tenderness be. But Dad was still trying. Maybe Ethan was really like him. We had a handsome boy. We were big. It's not impossible. Daughter, especially since his mother, God rest her soul, said that he was a big boy when he was a child. That's the version I'm gonna give Michael. Emily smiled slyly. Don't let him say that we didn't have any heroes in our family. It's just a pity that it didn't help Dad, and the disease still twisted him. That's the thing, that healthy people pass away, shook her mother's head. Are you going to the cottage today? Yes, I should take out the weeds and water the flowers. We're not doing anything else. We'll wait for Michael to come back from his business trip. Do you think he'll do it? Camille smiled ironically. Let him get used to it. Emily waved her hand. And I won't be able to help you yet. At least he'll be supportive. Nothing will happen to him. If you go to the cottage after work for a week or two, it's good for your health and good for the family. Well, we'll see. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. But I'm going to see my son. He'll wake up soon. Kiss me, our Bogator, with a smile, and loudly said the mother and sent her an air kiss. And everyone who was also socializing under the windows turned sharply in her direction. From such intense attention, Camille was a little embarrassed, but immediately realized why it happened and that they had no negative assumptions about the appearance of the child. She proudly said that he was born almost 4 kilograms. That's why we call him a Bogator. Congratulations! It came from all directions, and Camille barely fought them off while they shook her hand. However, she appreciated such a reaction and concluded that there were no large children among the other women in labor. So they were surprised when they heard about the 4 kilograms. Probably imagined a lump with rotten meters. And they were partly right. After all, Ethan did look well-fed with a baby. But on the other hand, it didn't cause any problems. He didn't pass on and ate equally with everyone else, behaved calmly, didn't throw tantrums, and gave his mother a chance for a full night's sleep. Emily was even lucky to have such a balanced child, and this despite the fact that she was a fiery person. In him closely intertwined genes of both parents and formed a unique image of an individual personality. Hair and eye color. At first, Ethan adopted from his mother, but the external contour, face, lips, and structure, cheekbones from his father. All of which made him a truly beautiful child, for whom Emily would have spared nothing. She fully realized her role as a mother and no longer worried about how she would raise her son on an intuitive level. Emily felt fully supported, but only not yet divided it among themselves and did not analyze from whom it comes more. And only after a while everything fell into place. The day of her husband's arrival was approaching, and Emily was visibly worried. She had already been informed about the discharge and prepared the necessary recommendations for the further care of the child. In addition, the day before, Michael had sent a message in which she wrote that he would pick her up from the hospital himself. True, there were no bright smiley faces in it, and it said that her husband wrote this message without much enthusiasm. But at the same time, Emily did not go into details and demand explanations. She wanted with every fiber of her being to return home as soon as possible and finally feel herself in the native element near her loved ones. A little earlier, half an hour before Michael arrived, her mother arrived. Camille was not allowed into the ward again, and while she was humbly waiting for her daughter, other happy fathers and relatives reached the special exit. And everyone was languidly waiting to see if they would be allowed to pick up their new moms. The head nurse and Camille came around the corner. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my brother-in-law's license plate. He pulled up not far from the entrance. When he got out, he had a modest bouquet of flowers in one hand and a black bag in the other. Apparently, a gentleman's kit for the medical staff. Basically, she hadn't noticed anything strange yet, and it was possible to assume that the son-in-law was really happy to meet his wife from the maternity hospital. But as soon as Michael approached her, he was immediately cold. "Hello, Camille. Did you come here before me, or have you been on duty since yesterday?" "Hello, Michael." She answered him with the same restraint. "If they'd let me stay, I wouldn't have left here at all. But don't judge me. I didn't wait, by the way. I was making money. I'm sure you did." "I see you're not in the mood," Michael summarized. "Well, with your permission, I'll wait for my wife in silence." Camille made no reply, for just at that moment, Emily appeared at the door. She was carrying the baby in her arms, and she was glowing with happiness. She was assisted by the same nurse, Evelyn. But Emily seemed to be doing quite well without her. At least she didn't fall or stagger. She had enough strength to move around normally. When Michael saw his wife, he smiled and almost confused who to give what to. "Hello, my love. I'm so glad we're back together. Now it's our baby too, and hello, sweetheart." Emily interrupted him and handed him the baby in his arms. "It's so beautiful, just like you. It's got yours in it. Don't worry." In fact, he's like two peas in a pod in his parents. Yeah, I just said the wrong thing. Michael got nervous and even blushed a little. Camille intervened, noticing the confusion on his son-in-law's face. Okay, I'll just be a minute. He quickly handed his son to his mother-in-law. It was as if the burden was burning his hands, and he could not feel at ease while he was holding his own son in front of him. Another alarm bell rang, but this time Camille did not pay any attention to it. Or rather, she didn't want to think about it on a day like this. After all, she was welcoming her daughter and grandson from the hospital. All other problems and questions were in the background. And even this situation with the transfer of the child was not an exception. Meanwhile, Emily also noticed how her husband too quickly agreed to give the child away. He could have been supportive. I could have unlocked the car myself. Maybe you don't even trust me with the keys anymore. What are you, my favorite? Of course I do, Michael replied with a tremor in his voice. It just seemed a little tired and not in the right state of mind to be fiddling with keys. I'm fine. Open up, Emily commanded, and taking the baby from the mother, she said softly, we opened their eyes. We're learning about the world around us. Look, he's trying to see where they took him. Camille said with a smile. Mom, but he can't see anything yet. Yes, I know, but it's still interesting. He's a great big guy. It makes your heart swoon to see such beauty. Why do you keep using that word? Michael grumbled unhappily, opening the cabin door in front of them. Yeah, from the fact that he was born big. Emily cut him off. You'll see when you're home drunk. All right, get in, let's go. Emily and the baby and her mother sat in the back seat and put small pillows in their laps. Michael had carried them with him just in case, so he could stop and pick them up on the road. Look in the rearview mirror. He made sure everything was in order and pulled out of the driveway. The car pulled smoothly out of the maternity hospital grounds and headed toward home. On the road, neither of them said a word, as if there was nothing to talk about. Even Camille was silent, though she had something to say and how to present it. But she decided not to stir things up. She had had enough of her son-in-law's greeting. He looked at her so haughtily, as if there was a gulf between them. And to cross it, it was necessary to build bridges in the form of status promotion. In other words, to rise to his level, to be able to talk on equal terms. But she was not going to do it, because she realized that her son-in-law would not appreciate it anyway and would look for new gaps to get even more distant. Having combined all these alarm bells, it was possible to come to the conclusion that Michael planned some meanness. But what exactly was going on in his head was still a mystery. Camille tried to catch the course of his thoughts, but he was constantly maneuvering. It was as if he felt that his mother-in-law was waiting for a convenient moment to catch him on some word. When they arrived home, they all went to the nursery together. There Emily laid her son on the bed and crucified him. Michael looked at him calmly and said indifferently, "And I wouldn't say that the rich boy is just a well-fed child. You sound like you're upset." Emily replied unhappily. No, I just judged his complexion, shook my head, and in his eyes did not even light up fire. It usually happened at the moment of the first acquaintance with the child. And the new parents, whether father or mother, directly begged for happiness and visibly worried, but not Michael. He was very calm, as if the son was not brought from the hospital and bought in a toy store on sale. About the same condition could be read on his face. And Emily, sensing her husband's indifference to her own child, muttered unhappily, "It would be better to help with the tapes than to stand there." Well, I don't know how. Look how it is necessary and memorize. Might come in handy. In what way? Michael frowned. You're always at work. I'm confused with the baby. But it could happen that you're going to be overwhelmed. Yeah, well, you have to study. How about a celebratory dinner? Not tonight. Emily crossed her arms across her chest and made a sour face. What about you, Camille? He turned to his mother-in-law. I don't think we should celebrate today either. She shrugged. Let's do it sometime next weekend, just in time for the cottage. Water your flowers again. No one's forcing you. Mom can do it herself. Emily cut him off. Even though I told him at the hospital he'd be helping for at least a couple weeks. In general, as I understand it, today the holiday is canceled. Just in case, I decided to check with Michael. Yes, the wife and mother-in-law answered in one voice. I see. Then we continue to learn how to swaddle. We bent over the baby. He began to change the tape together with his wife, and at the same time his mother-in-law was watching him. And she had already formed a definite opinion. What should she and her daughter expect in the future? She clearly imagined how her son-in-law would change in a month or sooner. Judging by the way he behaved now, it was safe to say that he was preparing for something unexpected. And soon it happened. Or rather, in a week. That's how long it took Michael to reveal his cards. Only he could not imagine what would be waiting for him in the future. He had counted on a pleasant and promising prospect, but in the end he fell to the bottom of life, and none of his friends felt sorry or lent a helping hand. After all, he had committed an act for which there was no justification at all. Not only that, he did not have the courage to ask for forgiveness from the closest people. He simply took and burned all the bridges. However, all this did not happen overnight, but over a period of time. Fate quietly sneaks up on him to send a boomerang in return. And he struck such a blow that overnight overturned all notions of good and evil. Michael found himself in a place he never expected. He'd never even dreamed of this world. He had only heard about it from his acquaintances, and even then the most superficial information. But when he was plunged there with his head, he howled and remembered everything he had done before. His brains did not turn off and gave out new images from the depths of his subconsciousness. One was scarier than the other, and it seemed that there was neither end nor edge. So much swam, and his soul with dirt and varnish, that he almost did not notice anything. It was only his mother-in-law who discerned his amorphousness, but too late to notify her daughter of it. Emily was caught in our usual debriefing when she was confronted with the fact, and in such a harsh form that she almost lost the gift of speech. She still had faith that her husband would not leave her and find another woman. But he did even worse, and thereby signed a one-way ticket to normal surroundings, and he would not be able to get there for a long time, at least not without help. And when Michael bypassed the real prospect of further existence, he began to look at many things differently. But by that time, the flywheel of the fateful boomerang had spun to its full speed and was not going to let him out of its orbit. After Emily showed her husband the process of the experience, he seemed to understand the basics and promised to keep practicing. Even assured everyone that he would be the best father ever. You'll see, just give it time, and soon you won't recognize me at all. You're careful with the changes, Emily. Ethan and I are really going to wonder who that uncle is living with us. That's a good one. I'll keep that in mind. Michael said snidely. What about you, Camille? Did your son-in-law learn to take over the child? Just the tops. But it's a simple matter. And even more ironically, she replied, we'll see how you behave when you have to stay with him all day. I hope it doesn't come to that. Honey, are you scared or something? No, I'm just a little worried. I shrugged. See, Mom, it's just normal excitement. Emily smiled. It takes time to get used to everything. You didn't know how to take care of a baby right away either. You must have had some guidance, right? What about it? Of course they scolded me, especially my mom. I remember her scolding me in front of the whole family for the fact that the diapers did not swallow, so ashamed I was ready to fall through the ground. And there are many such cases I can remember. Let's not be sad. I'm going to cry, Michael begged. He looked at his wife and then at his mother-in-law. Are you serious or are you joking? Is he angry? Emily asked. Michael noticed the evil light in her eyes, and out of sin answered in a low voice, I'm sorry, dear, it was a bad joke. And I understood everything, and I won't interfere where I'm not asked anymore. That's not even the point. It's just that you're being ironic on purpose. It's like you're being spiteful. And don't tell me it's because you're in a good mood. I wasn't. You know that. That's it. Calm down. Camille intervened again. We don't need you two fighting. You haven't had time to pick up the baby yet. You're already fighting. Mom, we're not fighting. We're just prioritizing, Emily corrected her. Exactly. And all of a sudden you panic. Michael, like a fox putting in his 5 cents to justify himself to his mother-in-law. But she didn't even bat an eye. She just kept pushing her line. Your family is one more person. And it's time to get smart, put aside your liberties, and start living for a brighter future. So you're saying that before this, we had no future at all? In a disgruntled voice, Michael asked. Why not? There was something. But you are for yourself, and most of the time without any moral responsibility. Everything that happened between you, you perceived as ordinary things. And now it's time to look at life differently, and preferably from the other side. How do you do that, if it's no secret? It's very simple. You just have to compare your past, evaluate the future, and form the present. And without any surprises, so that later you won't have to regret the aimlessly lived years. Do you know how to live, mother-in-law? Sometimes wise thoughts to squeeze out. Michael smiled. And I almost always do. You just don't notice it. And if nothing changes, I'll soon be nothing to you at all. What are you talking about, Camille? Yeah, Mom's really not making a big deal out of it. Emily, we're supposed to be calming down, and you're just pouring oil on the fire. What am I doing? Outraged, she looked at her daughter. I'm sorry, Mom, it just slipped out, honestly. That's not what I meant to say. And if you think okay, I don't think anything. I really should get going, she shrugged. I'm just gonna kiss my grandson goodbye, and you can walk me out. Yeah, sure. Michael immediately jumped up from the couch and followed his mother-in-law. He realized that he had to show his hospitality at the end, so he took the baby in his arms to give it to his grandmother. Camille made a surprised face in response, but took the grandchild from him. And while the excited parents watched her, she spoke to him in a gentle voice. Why is his forehead wrinkled? We don't want to open our eyes. Well, you've tortured me. I want to sleep, and you're here with your guests. I can't get any peace from you. Mom, that's so sweet. You're such an angel, Emily said with tears in her eyes. He's the angel. He gets all the attention. She nodded at her grandson. Now for him, we must try to live for him, not for ourselves. Yes, we understand. Well, that's good. Then I'm off. If you need anything, call me anytime. I'll come and babysit. Emily took her son back from her and put him in his crib. Interestingly enough, he didn't even get cranky. That's what grandmother's hands meant when they were centered in calmness itself. She could easily calm any child and set him in a positive mood. Michael realized it at once, but he didn't appreciate it. Having seen off the grandmother, the couple cooked a light dinner, refusing from delicacies and even less alcohol. It turned out quite well, considering the fact that Ethan continued to sleep peacefully. It was only towards nightfall that he woke up. But then Emily arrived in time with a new submariner and immediately came to his chest to feed. In such a rhythm, a whole week flew by imperceptibly, and it would seem that one could conclude that everything got better, but no. One evening, when they were getting ready and tucking the baby in, Michael suddenly said, "It's not much. There's nothing like me in him at all." "What are you talking about?" Emily almost shouted, but immediately covered her mouth with her hand and cried quietly. "And look at you, as if you were someone else's child." "Michael, stop talking nonsense. What about you? What's going on with you today?" "Nothing. I just took your mom's advice and decided to look at life from a different perspective." I answered you snidely. "Well, here's the thing. I decided to listen to her for once." That jerked Emily's shoulders. "So what came to your mind? Why don't you share? The child is mute." "That's the conclusion I've come to. And don't even try to change my mind. I'm not going to. But in a month's time, you'll be the one apologizing. We'll see about that. Don't guess when you don't know what the future holds." "What do you mean?" "A frown on your brow?" asked Emily. "Then you'll see when the time comes." What could it mean? She didn't know yet, but she was wary. Her husband had suddenly changed for the worse. And interestingly enough, her mother had said the same thing. So Emily decided to do a DNA test to prove her parentage. In addition, she made her mother aware of the incident and generally offered to move in with her. Emily, however, refused. "We have to wait a little longer. Maybe he's temporarily losing his mind. Then he should be in a mental institution, not among normal people." "Well, Mom, why so extreme?" "Because very soon he'll pull some other stunt, and before you know it, you'll be out on the street." "I don't think it'll come to that. Besides, he apologized the next day. He was a little tentative, like he didn't feel guilty. So what? You two don't talk at all now. Only in the morning and at night. It's still a bit of a stigma. Emily shrugged. And Michael understands that. But he doesn't want to admit it and keeps pretending that nothing happened. See for yourself. But my heart feels that this is a preparation for something more serious, warned her mother. I hear you. Soon will be the results of the examination, and then he will definitely calm down. At that moment, Emily had no idea what her husband was preparing for her. He didn't just get excited about the parentage. He had to prepare the ground and draw a line under certain actions. However, his wife was bending his line, and this fact forced him to force events. Michael did not wait for a convenient moment, which, according to his calculations, was to come in 2 months, and struck a blow at the most unexpected moment. But before that time, he and she kind of even made up and agreed that there would be no disagreements between them. And just so there was no doubt about it, personally, Michael started acting like a model family man. Since then, it's been another week and things have kind of calmed down. But eventually he ran out of patience and had another fight with his wife. So the neighbors were pointing fingers at them the next morning. Emily cried all night. At the same time, she did not sleep well because her son was capricious. The husband, with his loud screams, drove everyone to a white fury, and first of all the child. He even began to shudder, and this did not bode well. The mother again offered Emily to move in with her and leave Michael for a while. But she again refused. And when the results of the examination came back, she presented them to her husband. He read them carefully and haughtily said, "I don't believe these papers. This is not my child." "Yes. How can you say that?" Emily was angry, and she almost threw a punch at him. "I carried our baby for 9 months. You've been waiting for it to arrive, and now here you are. You don't want to admit it, but forensics won't lie. It says in black and white that he's your own son. I don't know anything. We'll each have our own opinion." Michael wouldn't let it go. "In fact, if you don't like it, you can pack your things and leave. So you're going to kick me out. What about our baby? I don't see a problem. Take it with you. I don't want anyone else's." "What are you talking about? Like a parrot? A stranger is a stranger." Emily begged and sobbed loudly. "He's your child, and that's the end of it. It's good to draw a line, isn't it?" nodded Michael. "Now you can mimic it from my apartment. I'll be gone. But you'll regret it, and you'll remember me, but it'll be too late. Good riddance, and bring the baby." With tears in her eyes, Emily began to swaddle her son. Michael stood aside and smirked. At this moment, he did not even feel the approaching boomerang of fate, enjoying the humiliation and suffering of his wife. It seemed to amuse and amused him, and give him confidence that he was doing the right thing. While collecting her son, Emily suddenly remembered her mother's words about something serious, and realized that again she had let everything pass her ears, and believed in her husband's brothels and speeches. His whole rotten being was on the surface. It was only necessary to shake it harder, so that the outside would sleep. But she didn't, and now she wished for her own fruits of carelessness. There was a little money left in her purse, and that was enough for her to take a cab to her mother's. Naturally, Camille welcomed her daughter and grandson with open arms, but she also read moral lectures. "I warned you that this wouldn't end well. I even suggested you move in with me, at least for a while." "Mom, that wouldn't have worked for me. He's gone off the rails. It's like he's been waiting for the right moment." "I thought so too. And I still think he had a cunning plan." Camille shook her head. "What was that about?" Emily asked calmly. She had finally stopped crying. "Yes, and that it wasn't for Ethan that your Michael renovated the nursery. And in general, lately he's been behaving strangely trusting and almost dusting you off. And since my son was born, he's been all over the place. At first I thought it was just emotion from worry. And we even made up afterwards. But it's only been a week and it's happened again. I don't know what happened to him. Okay, I'm gonna take responsibility and tell it like it is. Your husband has another woman, and it's likely that she had a baby with him too. And he prepared this room for that child. I don't believe it. Mom, I don't believe it." Emily cried again, but this time from the realization that she had been told the real truth. After all signs converged: unexpected business trips, sudden spending of money, renovation of the children's room on her own initiative, and finally, the rejection of her own son. Calm down, daughter. What's to come is what's to go. I also at first believed in his sincerity, and then I began to suspect that he is not such a simple man. Slowly I looked closer, gathered information, analyzed, and drew conclusions. She didn't tell me anything about it. Emily sighed heavily and looked at her with tearful eyes. I was afraid you'd misunderstand me and blame me for everything. My mother shrugged and cried too. And only now I realized that I should have told you everything at once. You wouldn't have had to go through all this, and you wouldn't be crying in front of me now, but you would live in peace. What happened is what happened, Mom. But I still don't believe he did it for another family. What do you think? We'll see. Emily stayed with her because she had nowhere else to go. But at the same time, she filed for divorce. Michael received the official notice, but he didn't respond to it. And that said, he had completely lost interest in her and his son. They ceased to exist for him, literally and figuratively. And after some time, without waiting for an official divorce, Michael struck a decisive and final blow to his wife's ego. As expected, he was really preparing to accept a new family, and soon a woman came to him with a small daughter. What is interesting is that it was from the same city where he had been traveling lately, ostensibly on business. In fact, Michael lived with 3 families, and he liked the second one better. Apparently, this woman treated him in a special way. And if it was for her that he took this step. After his divorce from his first wife, his reputation had been dealt a significant blow. But Michael mistakenly thought things would get better. However, soon there were financial problems, and he called his wife to return the jewelry given to him. Surprisingly, Emily agreed and came to the park to hand over the jewelry box. Take it. I don't need anything from you. I'm only here for a while to straighten things out, he said guiltily, lowering his head later. I'll get it all back. You'll see. Just don't tell anyone about this. I won't. I'm no longer interested in your fate. Emily cried. You've completely forgotten about your son, haven't you? I no longer ask to visit. At least just call and find out how he's doing. I haven't had time. I've had some problems, but things will get better soon, and I'll visit you if you'll let me. I doubt that very much, but you can see your son, and that was the end of it. And it's amazing that after what he did to her, she showed him mercy. She even let him see her son. Although, if you think about it, she could have closed all the doors. Apparently, a piece of pity in her soul still remained, and she remembered him for a long time. But they never saw each other again, and a whole year flew by unnoticed. By that time, Emily had already gotten used to living without her husband. All the more so because there was always a caring and loving grandmother nearby. Together, they managed not only to educate Ethan, but also to provide him with everything he needed. Emily did not sit idly by and also worked part-time and brought a substantial income to the general budget. It was quite good and enough for all the necessary expenses. They even managed to save for a rainy day, but fate took care of them and warded off storm clouds. What couldn't be said about the former taker? He not only could not solve financial problems at the expense of his wife's jewelry, but also lost the last thing he had and above all the respect of close people. And his friends had stopped giving him a hand. And all because the boomerang of fate dropped him to the bottom of life. Michael couldn't cope with the oppressive pressure and fell into drunkenness. Naturally, his new wife left him and took his daughter. The apartment turned into a den, and alcoholics from all over the neighborhood began to come there. He took a spare drink and sank to the bottom of life, lower and lower. He never even thought about the fact that he had a different life. For all the things he'd done, he had to answer bitterly, and not only to be left without a family, but also to turn into an alcoholic. The boomerang of fate was so powerful that it left no chance for salvation. Even his neighbors, with whom he was once friends, did not lend him a helping hand. They simply shied away and pretended not to notice. Emily soon found out about it too, naturally from her mother, but she was unwilling to visit him. By saying such words, he had set himself up and gotten what he feared so much. Indeed, Michael mocked those who for one reason or another were above her life. And when he himself got there, he felt all the delights of a worthless existence on his own skin. And in this he could only blame himself, because he did not value what he had. His wife calmly adapted to the new life and did not worry about how her ex-husband. She realized that all this time she tolerated indifference and deceit, and did not even suspect what kind of person Michael really was. The lamentable outcome of their life together was an invaluable experience for Emily, and she learned from it certain lessons. However, she decided not to tie herself to new family ties for the time being. Their son was fine as it was, especially since grandmother was helping, and new life horizons awaited them ahead.